The meeting of the Select Board, June 9th, 2025. We're going to start first an executive session, so we'll open in open session, and I'll read the preamble, and then Fernando will read a motion to get us into executive session. So pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, and as amended as of March 28th, 2025, this meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members, the meeting/hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. This meeting will be recorded by the local scene. Members of the public who wish to watch the video may do so by viewing the Duxbury Government Access channels, Verizon 39 or Comcast 9. Viewers can visit the localscene.media/Duxbury for information about Duxbury programming, including streaming and watching replays on Duxbury YouTube. That will take a motion.
I move we go into executive session for the following purposes. Discussion regarding potential litigation, since an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the town. If the chair so declares in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapters 30A, Section 21, and the Select Board will adjourn immediately after completion of this executive session and reconvene in open session on or around 6:30 p.m.
And then I got to read it. Thank you. As chair, I declare the necessity of an executive session to discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation, as to do so in an open session may have a detrimental effect on the town's litigating position. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none?
Mr. Chair, could you
yes.
name the litigation? litigation?
Yes, litigation is Commonwealth of, Duxbury versus Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We'll start with Mike.
Roll call vote, please.
Yep.
Michael, aye.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Discussion pertaining to pending litigation regarding the MBTA Communities Act.
All right. So we are in executive session. pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on our agenda is open forum. I'll first invite my colleagues on the board to offer any questions, comments they would like to raise at this time.
Quite an agenda.
It is. Okay. Fernando?
I have nothing.
Okay.
Just that Brian and I attended, I'll let you do it.
Okay.
I'm sure you have something to say about that. So, okay.
Yeah, no, I just have, just something quick. We have Emily Newman here with us tonight. She's been an AFS student in the Duxbury schools and is leaving us shortly. I think to go to Washington DC and.
Apparently, she's already been.
Already been, okay. Just leaving us shortly then. And so what this, would like to present this to you, it says, the town of Duxbury, presented by the Select Board and Town Manager to Emily Newman, by virtue of the authority vested in us by the laws of the Commonwealth, we hereby name you as an honorary citizen of the town of Duxbury.
All right.
Yeah, witness their hands and seals this day, so congratulations.
All right. Emily, why don't you come on up?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I'm from Germany.
Germany?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you get to shake everybody's hands.
Great.
you.
Congratulations.
Nice meeting you. Congratulations.
Nice to meet you.
Miss your baby.
Miss your babysitting, God, I wish
All
I
right.
heard about that.
Good.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Lynn,
Excellent.
for bringing her.
Yeah, excellent. I have a few things.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
First, we just came out of executive session. One of the things we were discussing was the litigation, MBTA litigation. And I think it's okay for me to share that this board voted not to file an appeal of the court's ruling at this time. Congratulations to the class of 2025 and best wishes for your future endeavor. We had lots of parties over the weekend. I want to thank our viewers who alerted us to technical issues with Comcast Channel 9. We worked with the local scene in Comcast, and the matter is now resolved. Comcast viewers can again watch us live and in color.
Color is the best bit.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you to the MBTA Communities Working Group for its third and final public presentation held this past Wednesday. It was also professionally recorded by the local scene. Thank you, Dave Anton. And a link to the recording is available for viewing on the MBTA Communities Working Group page on the town's website, if you care to watch it. Just a couple more things. At the Plymouth County Advisory Board meeting this past Thursday evening, Duxbury's own Lyndall Tucker, who is a student at Bristol County Agricultural High School, gave a short presentation about her attendance at the 4-H National Conference in Washington, D.C. Lyndall and her group made a presentation to the USDA on food waste and how livestock and floriculture help connections to their food. Congratulations to Lyndall, Duxbury's own. I want to just announce again something I had mentioned last time, Veterans on the Bay. Duxbury Maritime School is hosting veterans on Saturday, June 21st, 2025, from 9:30 to 12:30. It's a free event, but registration is required. Please register at dbms.org/outreach. And finally, as Cindy just, excuse me, Amy just made reference to a moment ago. Thank you to everyone involved, especially the Where Angels Play Foundation in the construction and dedication of the Clancy family playground at Wadsworth Field. Saturday's ribbon cutting was bittersweet, but the turnout, especially by families and young children, was tremendous. Thank you to everybody who participated. Anything from public? Open forum. I don't see anything, so we will move on next. I think it is past 6:35. We have a fee hearing, proposed new fees and/or fee changes for the following departments: cemetery, conservation, and fire. Mary, would you like to take us through that?
We have representatives from each of the departments.
Okay.
I will,
Well, I see Chip is closest to the microphone, so I'll let cemetery go first.
I'll go ahead and move the, open the public hearing.
Yes, thank you.
I move that Select Board open the public hearing regarding the proposed fee changes for the following departments: cemetery, conservation, and fire. Roll call vote.
Michael, aye?
Fernando, aye.
Second.
It is.
Okay, great. Brian, aye.
Amy, I.
Great. And and Cindy just stepped out. Chip, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Chip Locketti, Superintendent of Cemeteries. The Cemetery Department has some fee increase proposals, and I'll just run through them really fast. Interments for a casket burial during the week, its current is $600, and we are proposing to raise it to $800. Interment casket burial on a Saturday, going from $800 to $1,000. Interment cremation weekday, $250 to $350. Interment cremation Saturday, $350 to $450. Those were last raised roughly 7 years ago. Unfortunately, the price of labor, everything has gone up. We've held out as long as we could on that, and it's time we raise them to keep up. A couple other fee increases would be foundations going from $100 a square foot to $150. Once again, labor, the cost of material, the equipment. And last but not least is to set a flush marker would go from $50 to $100, and that, I've worked for the town 20 years and it was never increased. So that's definitely long due.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Mike?
Have you weighed this against the other competitors and the towns that you rely upon?
So I did look at some of the other towns. I know Hanover and Marshfield are looking at their fees, as I was. They actually called me asking about our fees. As far as competition, it's a different market than crematory,
Okay.
so it's not as vital on that. But these fees, as I said, they haven't gone up in 7 years, so,
Are we covering our costs?
yes.
Excellent question.
All
So
right,
I
then-
think
What's
for
wrong with
me,
my
I
question?
know it's not maybe a competition, but are these fees generally in line with what other cemeteries in our area are charging?
Yes, we actually will, we might be on a little high end right now, but everyone else is looking at their fees, and I don't know what they did for their fees.
Okay.
The key for me is that we cover our costs, right? We're not allowed to make money. We're not a for-profit organization, so the key is covering the costs for these services that
And
we
that's-
provide. And I've heard that.
That's why we waited 7 years.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? See anybody online? All right, I will be delighted to take a motion.
Move to accept the increases in cemetery fees.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it, the motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, have a good night.
Mary, do you need that effective as of July?
I see Nancy is next closest to the microphone, so let's hear from Conservation.
Do you need us to move as it's written here?
Go right
Hi,
ahead.
Nancy Rufo, Conservation.
Excuse me.
Are you guys
I
ready?
don't,
Sorry.
Okay, no, I can wait.
let me see here.
So if you could
Okay.
redo that, so it's as of,
Right, I move that the Select Board approve the recommended fees and/or fee changes for the Cemetery Department effective July 1st, 2025, as presented.
Okay, do we have a
Second.
second? Any discussion? Hearing none, we will take a revote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Roll call vote,
Oh,
sorry.
roll call? Okay.
Michael, I.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Oh, Cindy,
All right, great.
I was talking to
So we're
Mary.
good with cemetery?
We go with cemetery.
We're
All
good with
right.
cemetery.
Thank you. Nancy, you're on.
Hi, Nancy
Okay.
Rufo, Conservation Administrator. We also reviewed our fees, and we're proposing increases on 2 of them. The first is for certificates of compliance. Our current fee is $150 regardless of how long ago the order of conditions was issued. So we looked at some local towns and how they do it, Marshfield, Pembroke, Plymouth, Hingham, and we modeled ours primarily after Marshfield, which has a tiered approach depending on how long ago the order of conditions were issued. So we're proposing $150 if submitted within 5 years of the order of conditions, $500 if submitted beyond 5 years of the orders, $750 if submitted beyond 10 years, And then some different fees for subdivisions, $12.50 for subdivisions within 5 years, which doesn't include single-family homes within the subdivision, and $2,500 for subdivisions beyond 5 years. And again, that does not include single-family homes within the subdivisions. So just as an example, if we had this fee structure in FY 2025, we had one COC request that was beyond 5 years, so we would have had a $500 fee instead of the $150 that we charged. And then we had 15 that were beyond 10 years, which would have been $11,250 instead of $2,250. So we could have collected $11,750 versus the $2,400 that we did collect.
Can I ask you a question?
Go right ahead.
I'm a little confused on this. Is this, there's for certificates of compliance and an order of conditions with an issuance date in the future? And so the
Correct.
further out the issuance date, the more money.
Correct.
So is that the homeowner didn't provide their certificate of compliance within the time frame that they were required to do so, and therefore then it's a larger fee? Or do these people have a longer amount of time to comply?
So there is no time frame where somebody has to apply for the certificate of compliance. It's not like an occupancy permit. So what typically happens is we'll get somebody who is closing on a sale of the property, and a title search will discover there's an open order of conditions. So it's cases where people either forgot to apply, didn't read the orders, because we say in the orders that part of the deal here is that when this project is done, you need to come back to us and request a certificate of compliance. So it's a myriad of reasons why, but what happens is the longer out it goes, the more
Work.
effort it takes us to try to recreate what happened on the site. So
Understood.
it's a harder lift
Okay,
the longer
thank you.
ago the project was.
So,
Yeah.
oh,
Right ahead. Renee, you gonna ask your question?
I was gonna,
so people will know this ahead of time? though,
Yes,
right?
yes,
That-
it's right in the orders. Yes, we actually, it's in the special conditions of the orders, and I also put it in my cover letter that you'll have to eventually request a certificate of compliance.
And that the fees will increase if they don't,
Well, right now,
right now
They
it doesn't.
don't.
Yes.
But it would say that, well, if you, don't do it, for 5 years, then it's gonna be an additional amount.
if this becomes the schedule, I can include this in the special conditions. Yes, yep.
Mike, did you have some? Fernando?
yeah, Nancy, so
Yeah.
I know that you went to other towns and took a look at what they did, but
Yep.
what is the basis for you charging these fees? What work are you doing?
So, that's a great question. So, if they apply for a certificate of compliance shortly after the project occurs, so, first, we have the intake of the application. We have to make sure that the application is complete based on what the order of conditions required. So most times it's an as-built, it's a letter from an engineer saying that this project was completed according to the as-built, and there's a fee associated with it.
Right.
So we do kind of an in-office review, and then I have to go out to the site
Right.
and do a site review. Then it goes before Concom, and then we have in-office again where we actually issue the certificate of compliance, and then we need to make sure that that is recorded at the registry, and that's what releases
Does
it.
$150 then, does that cover all that work that you do?
It does if it's short, if they apply within 5 years,
Yeah.
it's a pretty easy lift.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that 150, and then thereafter, the increases because it gets more complicated for you to
Recreate history.
recreate
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So you feel comfortable that these fees, I mean, the substantial increases, however, the question remains the same. Do you think it will cover the costs of you providing this service?
I do,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
All right, do you want to move on to violations?
Sure. Oh, Michelle, can you bring up, sorry. This has pictures, so this one will be more exciting. So right now for violations, There's a tiered approach for first, second, and third offense, and it's $50 fine for the first offense, $75 for the second, and $100 for the third. And we're proposing that it increases to $100 for the first, $200 for the second, and $300 for any subsequent offense. And we've seen an increase in destruction on our trails and dumping on our trails. And frankly, the fees that we have right now wouldn't even cover a dump sticker if that's the way a person would opt to dispose of whatever they have.
You have some great
So-
pictures here of tires and.
Yeah, oh
and
yeah.
It looks like they're using Duxbury trash bags, but they haven't bothered to drive over to the dump.
No, so those trash bags are land management assistant.
Oh, they're
He
yours.
was on the trails, yeah, so he filled in one section of town, these 3 trash bags, plus he had the green barrel of recyclables.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's become an increasing problem.
So that's my first question is, basically, should the fines be higher to cover all the work that your team is doing?
Statutory.
Oh, statutory.
Yeah, the current bylaw
Oh, okay.
caps us at 300.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Right.
good question, I had the same
Go
one.
ahead, Mike.
How do we enforce? Do we have a box of tickets somewhere, or how do you write it up? Do you
We
have to
write
get
it,
the police involved?
we'll write it up and send it if we can identify the person. We, oftentimes that's a challenge to figure out who dumped it. But if we do find out, then we'll send a letter.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, other questions from the board?
No, no brainer.
Questions from the public on the order conditions fees or the violations? Okay, if there are none, I will take a motion.
I move that Select Board approve the recommended fees and/or fee changes for the Conservation Department effective July 1st, 2025, as presented.
Second.
All right, and this is going to be roll call?
Correct.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Mike?
Michael, I.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Reardon? I believe this is our last fee hearing.
Yeah.
Fire.
All mixed up. Fix this one.
Hi, good evening, Rob Reardon. I'm your fire chief. I bring forth some fee proposals, some changes that we brought in front of fiscal advisory and that they approved. The first one is for ambulance service, and we are looking to raise 3 of our rates, our basic life support, our ALS 1 and ALS 2, in addition to the mileage. So when we did this, we did a cost comparison to our neighbors. We did it to a much larger audience also. And we found, once again, our fees were not where they should be compared to others. And the reason for the fee increase is obviously the cost of doing business has increased tremendously. And, you know, some of the simple examples could be gloves. You know, when we had done some analysis, they've gone up 300%. And it's hard for us to keep up with those costs. Ambulances, just a couple years ago, they were about 250,000. We just approved one a couple years ago that was 525. So they've almost doubled in cost. So if you look at all this, the cost of doing business has increased. Obviously, with the override feeling, we've lost a couple paramedic positions, so all this stuff can help us, I think, recover some of the cost to do business. Any questions on the, yes?
Mike?
Okay. Insurance reimbursement, is this something that has to be negotiated with insurers to get reimbursement at all?
No.
Okay, so you can just tell them what it costs and they'll pay it?
Correct. Different Medicare rates are negotiated, but as far as the healthcare industry, that's where we get the majority of our reimbursements from.
Okay. And this probably gets paid off, I'll leave it at that. I get it.
Okay.
A quick question just for the audience. So we got the base rate, and then we have ALS 1 and ALS 2. Can you just maybe clarify what those terms mean?
Sure. The majority of our calls are ALS 1. That's our increase of 7.95%. So I'm saying,
What's ALS stand for?
oh, I'm sorry, advanced life support. So
Advanced
that's
life
our
support.
normal, you know, when we're doing EKGs,
Yeah.
hooking people up to the cardiac monitor, doing basic IVs and medication administration.
I think it's important, advanced life support, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you for that
You're welcome.
clarification.
Sure.
Is it, again, is it covering your costs or not in providing that advanced life support for?
So just to do some rough numbers, last year we did approximately 1,600 transports. So if you took the majority of those calls, which were the advanced life support number 1, Simple numbers, you're at almost $300,000 increase in revenue. This year, we've brought in revenue approximately $1.3 million from the ambulance.
So the answer is yes, it does cover your costs, or does it?
Well,
cover
our
your
total
costs?
budget is over $4 million for the fire department, but if you're looking at just the EMS, yeah, I think these increases are gonna help us to cover our costs. Are we gonna truly cover everything?
No.
With the way expenses are going up, I can't say for sure, but
Okay.
it's definitely gonna help.
Amy?
Unlike the other two fee increases that we just dealt with, I kind of remember that in the last couple of years, we did increase these fees.
We did.
We did.
We did January of '24, right? Yes, January
Yeah,
of
and I think
'24.
there was some, just touching on Mike's comments, I thought that during that discussion, there was some concern or discussion regarding some insurance companies, whether it was Medicare or wasn't covering, that those were, that they just don't cover what private insurance
Right,
costs. Is that
correct.
so?
Correct, yeah, that's what I had mentioned just earlier. Medicare only gives us a percentage back, but we do go back at the end of the year, and we try to recoup some of those costs. Is it all of it? No, but it's a time and labor-intensive process that we do, and sometimes we can get $30,000 or $40,000 back at the end of the year.
From Medicare, from
Correct.
from the feds. So what portion of the runs are Medicare covered, just an idea, versus private health
I'd
insurance?
have
Is
to,
it
I'd have to look that
50-50
data
or-
up. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Are you recouping cost just from the insurance companies, from Medicare, or are you trying to recoup the cost from the clients, patients, people that you've transported?
So the majority of this is coming from the healthcare, unless somebody opts for self-pay, someone who doesn't have insurance and wants to pay it, take the chances and pay on their own. But the majority is coming from your healthcare companies.
Yeah.
But these fees would apply to everyone.
Anybody who's
Including
transported-
self-pay.
Anybody who's transported in
Yep.
an ambulance.
All right, other questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, anything further, Chief?
I just want to talk about the fees at the bottom, about the vehicles, something
Okay.
new.
Yep.
If you can see at the bottom of the sheet. So the other thing that we're proposing is a cost per vehicle. So sometimes when a detail is called for, they need a vehicle. So they might need an engine, they might need a ladder. That's a cost to the town. And if you start to look at some of our fleet, we have brush breakers that are 40 years old. We have a ladder truck 20 years old. We have an engine over 30 years old. Those are due for replacement. An engine right now is over $1 million, $1.2 million. So if people are using that for detail, they should pay the cost of using that so we can recoup some of it. It's a standard that's being done in many towns already. So how do we come up with these rates? This is a FEMA rate, and it's actually pretty much what all the other communities are already using. It doesn't come up often. We're not doing as many details as the police do, but when it does, it allows us to charge for these services.
Okay.
All right, so you're not paying or you're not charging the vehicle charge plus the, you wouldn't do BLS plus the,
No, this is, so.
It's a separate-
So the top one
yeah.
is just for ambulance transports.
Yep.
This would be for, let's say that, there was a detail for,
road race
marathon,
or something?
road
Yeah,
race.
okay.
And they needed something special where a fireworks detail, where maybe they need an engine or a brush breaker. That's
Okay.
how the town would recoup their cost.
Makes sense. Amy?
Just because I'm sensitive to this issue right now, but these fees for these vehicles, there's ambulance, the brush fires, there's a variety of things listed here. Those would not apply to community events.
Describe a community event. Is that something the town is doing, or is that?
So let's just say it like it is, the 4th of July. If the 4th of July, if you bring a vehicle down there, are they, again, I think there's, right, the 4th of July parade, what did I say? Sorry.
That's a town event.
So that's a town event. So
that's
that
a town
wouldn't,
function.
right, so
You gotta
that
Be
wouldn't,
careful with community event. If someone's running a barbecue and they want fire trucks down there and they want to hire a detail, that's different. That's a private
Got it.
detail.
so
A
for,
town, we're not going to
so for
charge it.
the Memorial Day parade or the 4th of
We
July
don't use
parade,
any
they
trucks
wouldn't,
for the
They
Memorial
wouldn't
Day
be
parade.
charged these fees. It's just for
The Fourth of July
details.
parade is a town event.
Correct, okay. So I'm just making sure that, okay, thank you.
All right, further questions? Anything from the public? All right, let's take a vote.
I move that the Select Board approve the recommended fees and/or fee changes for the fire department effective July 1st, 2025, as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call starting with Mike.
Michael, aye.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Great, so,
I move that the Select Board close the public hearing regarding proposed fee charges for the cemetery, conservation, and fire departments. Second.
Second.
all right, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Roll call, Mike.
Michael, aye.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Great, so if you have a medical emergency or need to get buried or order of conditions, do it in the next couple of weeks, right? All right.
Jeez, save a lot.
Congratulations. Thank you to the department heads for bringing these up for
Thank
our
you.
consideration.
Yeah.
Next is aquaculture lease renewal hearing regarding Kevin Thompson. I think I saw Dick Brennan, there he is, from Shellfish Advisory. You help us walk through this.
I move that the...
Oh, hold on just a second, sorry. Yep.
Wait. I move that Select Board open the advertised public hearing for review and approval of aquaculture application regarding Kevin Thompson's aquaculture lease renewal.
Need a
Second.
second?
Second.
All right, roll call.
Michael, aye.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
So we'll hear from
So we have
member of the
Mr.
Shellfish Advisory, the applicant, and from the public.
Great,
All
so,
right.
go ahead, Mr. Brennan.
Dick Brennan, 100 Myrtle Street, Shellfish Advisory Chair. We held a meeting, Kevin Thompson, for a renewal of a grant. Kevin was on a three-year grant. That's the preliminary grant that goes, once somebody gets a grant, they have 3 years to prove themselves, to see if they're working the grant as described. Kevin has done that. He's applied for a 10-year, which is normal, and we had this committee meeting, and we all agreed. First of all, we made sure that he had residency. He proved that. We talked to Jake to see if he's doing what follows the regulations. He is. Kevin's here tonight. We all approved it unanimously. Kevin told me that he's planning on to at least put 250 million seed down per year. That's what he's been doing. He doesn't recoup that, unfortunately, because of he only gets about 30% of that back.
250 million or 2.5 million?
2.5 million.
Say it
You
again.
might leave more space if it's 250 million, right? All right, just want to make sure we're
Yeah,
clear.
sure, if
Okay.
you want to give him 10 more acres.
Always just
Kevin runs under the banner of Duxbury Oyster Company. He's here if you'd like to speak to him. We did it unanimous to give him the 10-year grant license for the renewal. We're asking for your approval.
Okay. Kevin, is there anything you'd like to add?
Kevin Thompson, 540 Temple Street. No, nothing specific, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions from the board?
no.
I haven't.
I'm good.
Okay. Anything from the public? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan.
Why don't we have a motion?
Yeah, I move that the Select Board approve the renewal of Kevin Thompson, 540 Temple Street, for aquaculture lease license number 9732-2 for 10 years, pending all federal, state, and local reviews and approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. And this requires a roll call. We'll start with Mike.
Michael, aye.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing.
I move that the Select Board close the advertised public hearing for review and approval of aquaculture renewal application for Kevin Thompson.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. We will call for the roll call. Mike.
Michael, aye.
Fernando, aye.
Brian, aye.
Amy, aye.
Cindy, aye.
Great.
Let's just do roll calls all night.
You can if you want.
It's really nice.
Next, we're going to discuss articles and vote recommendations on the following special town meeting warrant articles. So it's all 10 of them. So why don't we start with numbers 1, 2, and, well, we'll start with 1.
Do you want to wait for
Yeah, why don't we wait for the planning board?
wait for the
Do we not have
board to
planning?
come
Oh, we don't
back?
have planning board. All right.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, if anybody needs a copy of the warrant, there are several in the back of the room. And if any of you need a copy, I have hard copies for you too.
Think so?
If we start from the supplemental appropriations, work our way up.
Well, Mary's not here either.
There's not
Oh,
either.
where to Mary?
Start with your first presenter.
All right, well, we have
So we have PFAS?
Articles
Article
4 and
4.
5.
4 and 5.
4 and 5.
All right, so we don't have anybody's, we are waiting folks for 1, 2, and 3, so
Yeah.
we'll next go to, I guess we can hear 4 and 5 together, we'll vote them individually. These are citizens petitions, use of stabilization funds to increase fiscal '26 budget, lines 30 and 32. The presenter and proponent is Derek Bennett. Mr. Bennett.
Good evening. So, my name is Derek Bennett. I'm a resident, a taxpayer, and the proponent of 2 articles to restore 2 police and 2 firefighter positions that were cut after the failed override. Let's be clear, public safety is not optional. It's not a luxury. These aren't extras, they're essential. Police and firefighters protect our homes, respond to our schools, and run toward danger when others can't. They're not a special interest, they're the public interest. These articles don't raise taxes. They responsibly use stabilization funds, which remain well above policy limits, to ensure our first responders have the staffing they need to keep Duxbury safe. This isn't about politics, it's about priorities. Every resident, every student, and every neighborhood deserves protection. Not next year, now. Let's send a clear message tonight that Duxbury backs its first responders. I respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. It's more for Chief Reardon here. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay.
I wanted to play this out because I was trying to understand the use of stabilization funds. So let's start. So this is the fire salaries. If we were to approve this, would this give you the ability to hire folks? Would you hire people knowing that you might not be able to, or could you explain how that would play out given the town manager's budget in December?
Sure.
Come.
So ultimate hiring authority goes to the town manager. If I was given approval to hire, I would try to hire immediately. I don't have to wait. You know, it's a little different than the police. I don't have to wait to put somebody through an academy. I have somebody who's ready to go, who could start immediately. I had a call firefighter that's worked from July up until about April with us, so they filled in full-time. My goal would be to try to hire that person and put them in the spot. Next, I could try to get a lateral for number 2 spot and basically fill those holes.
I guess my point is this. Suppose a balanced budget comes in and we're back to square one, where we are right now.
I mean, next year?
Next year.
Next year, in December. What does that mean for you as far as this, using this money? Would you not be able, you would then give these people that you just hired a pink slip, essentially?
I didn't understand the question. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
maybe
In
another-
December, we have a balanced budget. We're required to do a balanced budget.
Are you asking, am I going to have to let people go?
The same people
We're
that you
going to be
just
we're
hired.
going to be in the same spot we are today.
Right, no, but
in a
with this money.
Correct.
The same people you hire with the stabilization funds, would you then in 4 or 5 months later, have to give them a pink slip? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, well, I could, like I said, I could hire immediately. So if I get permission to hire, we're gonna put people in these seats immediately. So we're gonna get them for almost a year. That's the goal here.
The question is, right, so the amount of money being appropriated in this article, citizens petition, is enough to fund a firefighter for 2 firefighters for 1 year, is that
Yes,
correct?
Correct.
So we'll be faced with fiscal year '27 budget, trying to find money to fund, to continue funding these 2 firefighters. We've already seen that we have another challenge that that we'll need to start talking about later on this evening, of how we create a balanced budget for next year. So we will have to create another
Balanced.
balanced budget. And if we don't have enough money to pay for these 2 firefighters, we'll have to go back to stabilization fund again to continue hiring these guys, right? That's a choice we'll be facing in a year's time. That's the question you're asking, right?
Yeah, or do we have to give notice to them in December, just as we did this year?
I guess that would be up to you. I think a lot of these questions are above my pay grade.
Yeah.
I could give you my opinions, but the one thing I can say is, if I get the money to hire, we need to hire.
Okay.
We're short-staffed.
Okay.
There's no way around this. And I think a lot of people look at it as 2 people. This is a much deeper cut. It's more than 2. There's so many things that we can't do because we've lost these two people.
Yep.
Amy?
Chief, can you speak to, you guys are getting crushed with overtime because of the loss of two positions or that they weren't filled. Will this actually save money, or is the impact less than otherwise would be because it's actually saving a lot on the overtime? Or can you speak to that?
Sure, I don't think there'll be savings. So we're running 6 people on shift. So when somebody is out, whether it's vacation, sick time, whatever the case is, we have to put somebody there. This isn't an office job where we can say, Mrs. Smith just called from Tremont Street, we'll get to you at 8 in the morning. So every time somebody's out, we need to fill it. What we don't budget for is long-term illness. So I can tell you in the last year, we've had some catastrophic illnesses. We've had numerous surgeries, stuff that I probably can't talk to you about, but we don't budget for it. I had somebody out the entire year because of a catastrophic illness. Those are going to increase our overtime costs, because when that person's out, I need to fill the hole.
Yep.
So having 2 more positions will help, is what I'm trying to
Definitely
get
helps.
at.
You were asking if we're going to save overtime.
No, well, yes,
That
but
was the question.
you are going to be able to save some of the overtime because you're going to have 2 other people to help out. You're going to have 2 more bodies.
It's more complex than the way you're describing it, but I'll
Okay.
fill those 2. But when people are out, I still need to fill those holes.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any dispute that public safety is in need of resources.
Yep.
There was a robust discussion before the Finance Committee on this issue. I watched the video, and they were split. There were a number of good arguments, I think, on both sides. One thing, Mary, I want to put you on the spot just for a second. We have important departments that need to respond. And as the chief says, you can't wait till the next morning. But I put DPW in that group as well. I need my water to run, for example. We need the sewer for those who have sewer to run. So I get a little concerned about, well, number one, the prioritization, but what I want to ask you about is we do have a fiscal management policy that I was looking at earlier today, and I just had a question that I was hoping you could help me understand. So for stabilization funds, it's intended to buffer the general fund from the impacts of 2 to 3 years of reduced state aid or declining local receipts. I don't think we have declining local receipts, right? Okay. State aid?
Very consistent.
All right. It also requires that if we do use stabilization, that there needs to be a plan presented for replenishing the fund. I don't think I saw anything here about replenishing, like where's that money going to come from?
So that would be part of, typically, the stabilization fund is funded via free cash. So we typically have an article at the special town meeting, and it's replenished via free cash. So we would need to, during our budgetary process, and as we look forward to future town meetings, to make sure that we have a plan to replenish that.
Okay. And then as I kept rating, because I was waiting for an exception, I found exceptions. Well, there's really one exception, which is, and I quote, "dire fiscal conditions may affect the year-to-year implementation of this policy." So I think the question for this board is, are we under dire fiscal conditions? Well, I guess my point is, I don't see us meeting the permitted use of stabilization unless it's some sort of exception. So I guess that's what I'm struggling with, is for the fiscal 26 budget period where we do have a balanced budget that was done very carefully and with a lot of pain and suffering, do we now, what is our recommendation to special town meeting where the idea is we take the funds that are for particular purposes, or particular category of purposes, and does this qualify as an exception as a dire financial or dire fiscal condition? I guess that's how I'm framing the question in my mind. Is that, how would you see it from just a pure financial? And I realize it's way more than just financial, but I want to start there.
Is that
Yep.
opposed to me?
Yes, yeah.
So The policies that were developed are a framework, right? And so the town strives to the best of its ability to adhere to those policies, but they are not statutory. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
So the policy framework that's been developed and adopted by the town of Duxbury is not statutorily required. It is incumbent upon the town, as you develop policies, to strive to live within those policies. So based on your interpretation, you're correct, Brian, that it doesn't necessarily meet the first couple of conditions with reduced revenues. We have constrained revenues, but we don't have declining revenues. With respect to dire emergency circumstances, the town has been facing this situation for a number of years. It doesn't come as any surprise. So whether somebody categorizes that as an emergency or not is really up to everybody's own interpretation. However, and public safety is certainly a priority among any community. But there are also other reductions that other departments have been facing that are equally as severe. And so it's up to the community to weigh the value of using these funds for this purpose.
I would have.
I have a question. Go ahead.
Just to your point, and I hear what you're saying, but I have to believe that the policy goes to an amount of money that we hold for stabilization, whether that's a percentage of our overall budget or whatever. So I would think that what you're reading is using the monies in stabilization that are within that amount that must be set aside. It's my understanding that we have that amount, but we also have a bit of a reserve on top of that. And that even if these funds were to be used, we would still meet the percentage requirement that we have to have, that I think that the policy speaks to.
I think the concern, I mean, I understand.
Can Mary just answer that
sorry.
before you?
Can I,
Sorry.
if I can speak to that, in terms of recommended thresholds is what you're referring to, Amy. So the DLS, Division of Local Services, recommends 5 to 7% of net operating revenues as a recommended threshold for a balance in a stabilization fund. The town of Duxbury's policies are a little bit more broad than that, and they recommend 5 to 10% of net operating revenues. Currently, at the end of fiscal ¡24, so June 30, 2024, the final, the last certified balance in the stabilization fund stood at just over $7 million, which represents 8.5% of net operating revenues. So we are in excess of DLS recommendations, but we are right sort of in the middle of our own recommendations.
And if the funds were to be used, what percentage would we be at then?
Well, we'd have to recalculate it on the current year's budget, but if we used last year's budget, it would still be over 8%.
Okay, thank you.
Fernando.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there. I understand that fire and police, and as well as DPW, and as well as our schools, actually, are important priorities that for the town. My concern is we use stabilization fund to fund the salaries for this 1 year. Fiscal year '27, what happens then? We're in the same boat. Do we continue using stabilization funds to fund salaries, or do we need to solve the problem? And I think that's part of the conversation. So,
Could I just
yeah,
speak?
go
So-
ahead. Yes, please, Derek.
I guess my answer to that would be, when this gets to the floor at special town meeting, if the voters approve both of these articles, I think that would be telling in itself that the town, the residents prioritize public safety. Now, you know, I think I said this in the finance committee meeting a couple weeks ago, but, you know, the DPW, the schools, it's all important. And I think I used the analogy that, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
That's all right.
Well, just that public safety is, in my opinion, the backbone of the town.
Right.
You know, whereas all of the departments make up the heart of the town, so I don't think any of them could stand on their own without public safety. So that's why we're looking to prioritize public safety. That's why we got signatures for the petition. And there wasn't a lot of pushback.
No,
So,
I
as far as
understand.
the seating years, the following years, I guess, like I said, the vote at town meeting perhaps will give you guys some idea of how the town wants to prioritize public safety when you develop the budget, and keeping that in mind. So,
Okay.
the goal is not to use stabilization fund, every year for this, just this one time, just to make sure we're back running efficiently and safely in town.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Mike, yes.
Mary, is there any other liabilities, or does this hurt us with our bond rating or anything like that?
So there's not a definitive answer to whether this one event will hurt our bond rating. However, what I will tell you is that we did have our bond rating call this year. We also had a subsequent meeting about a week ago, where I had invited the chair of the select board, the chair of the finance committee, and the chair of the fiscal advisory committee to participate in a conversation with Standard & Poor's, which is our bond rating agency. And it's clear, Standard & Poor's has made it abundantly clear that there are 5 categories that they traditionally look at for bond ratings, and each of those categories is weighted equally, 20% for each category: financial performance, reserves and liquidity, economic performance, and the like. And when they look at reserves and liquidity, which is the category that we're talking about here, this is one of our reserves. When they look at reserves, they look at all of our reserves, all of our eligible reserves in its entirety. And the litmus test that they use is that those reserves are more than 15% of general fund revenues. And if you are above the 15%, then you will receive their highest rating for that category. At our last bond rating review, the town was at 20.4%.
So this, if we used, if town meeting voted to use these funds, we would likely still be above 15%.
We would still be above, likely still be above 15%
Right.
based on June.
Probably-
So their bond rating was based on our financial statements as of June 30, 2024.
Yeah.
Our next bond rating will be based on our financial statements as of June 30, 2025. And so this is one reserve that is looked at, but it's also looked at in the aggregate with our other reserves. And so it is likely that we will still stay above 15%, but we need to see where we finish up at the end of this fiscal year.
Sure.
Okay.
Can I
Any
just
further?
add one thing to that? Just in my own math, the percentage, the stabilization fund was at 8.5%. If we were to use the $403,000 for the police and fire salaries, my math said it would be 7/100% reduction. So, if that helps.
Harry, have we used stabilization for operating costs before?
So in the 10-year look back that I did analyze, we've used the stabilization fund twice. Once was in 2019, and that was due to Storm Riley. So the town suffered a weather event, needed to use the stabilization fund for emergency repairs, but then that was replenished because there was FEMA coverage that came into the town for that storm damage. The second time that the town did use the stabilization fund was during COVID, and they used $750,000, some for the town and some for the school, to support the operating budget. That was a period where, during COVID, there were definitely declining revenues. Businesses were closed, people were not purchasing permits or stickers or going out to eat. There was definitely a period of declining revenues, and therefore it met that category or that test within the financial policy. So that technically, there is one time in the past 10 years or so that the town did use it, and it was during COVID.
Okay. Did I see a question down here? No?
Nope.
Okay. Although this isn't a public hearing, are we inclined to take some input from the public?
Oh, yeah,
Sure.
always.
If we're, I know we have a lot to go through tonight, so if folks have things they'd like to add to what Mr. Bennett has said, we'll entertain that, if you'd like to.
Something different?
Something, yeah, exactly, something that we haven't heard already. I invite you to address the board. And I don't see anything, so.
Oh, yes, we
Okay.
do.
Hold on, we got, Ms. Curtis?
Susan Curtis, High Street. The concern that has been brought up is, what do we do next year? And our goal is to make sure this never happens again. And since you people are so much more involved now in our finances, which I am very grateful for, I hope that you keep in mind that emergency services is not negotiable. Every single person in town uses that. Not every single person uses the pool or the library or whatever, and I'm not picking on them. I'm using that as an example. Every single person in this town uses fire and an ambulance. And we had a horrible situation in this town when Police Chief Carbone was, interim. And you know how that whole thing went. We had this masterful pair of people, our emergency services, step up to the podium and reassure our town and go to a horrible situation. And we want to make sure we take good care of those people. And I would love the DPW to be more funded. We couldn't get the group to go along with that. These are our two priorities. And I am asking you, please, when you do the budget, keep that in mind. This cannot happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Sullivan?
Betsy Sullivan, Washington Street. This is probably the single most difficult conversation that I think Finance Committee has had in all the years that I've been involved in it. Because using stabilization for reoccurring costs is, you don't do that, right? These, so as, and I think some folks were surprised at my vote, which was to support these two articles. And I did it with conversations back and forth with the chiefs, with, various folks. I disagree with Sue. This is definitely going to happen again, because unless we have an override next year, we are going to have a shortfall that is growing. We use the stabilization fund. The predicted revenue shortfall that Mary had presented to you recently was $600,000. Obviously, these are estimates, and this would add another $400,000 to that. One of the questions that I asked Derek, who, braved us and came and gave us a great presentation, and we had a really good conversation, and I was very grateful for that. Is, the folks that support this and that brought this forward have to understand that in order to continue, we will be looking at an override, and we're hoping that they will understand that and support that as well. The override last year, it failed. It didn't go down in flames. It passed at town meeting with a big majority, and it failed at the ballot. I think that we asked for too much in the eyes of the town, and we need to hear that. But I do agree with Derek that the support that he has gotten for these two departments and for public safety does give you a very clear vision as to priorities that the community will support. It doesn't mean that they won't support DPW. They have to. It doesn't mean they won't support the schools. But we need to keep in mind that these two articles do reflect a real concern on the matter of the community. So it is, again, really, really difficult decision, and we were split, but I do support it.
In the end, the Finance Committee did support it.
It was 3-3.
3-3.
And since then, there were 3 people that weren't there. I've spoken to 2 of the 3 that weren't there, and they were both supportive of this. And I plan on, we meet right before the special town meeting, and when everybody's there, I'm going to have them re-vote it so that we have an accurate number for you all to know what the reasoning was. And if it is your, the desire of town meeting, we will certainly speak to the support and why people didn't support it as well.
Okay. Thank you.
All set?
Anybody else
Yep.
wish to add to the discussion? Okay, I think we're ready for, we'll do 2 votes,
Yep.
4 and 5.
I move that the Select Board recommend the Article number 4, Citizens Petition, use of stabilization funds to increase fiscal year 26 budget, line 30, police salaries.
I just want to clarify the motion. We're recommending we're recommending approval to town meeting, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
We're doing them separately?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I don't think we require a roll call on this, right? So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Reluctantly, aye.
Okay, and that's me as well.
Because this is 1 year. I mean,
Yeah,
it's 1 year. And I'm going to repeat what Betsy says. We're going to have a tough conversation. We're going to have to put together a balanced budget. And as a town, we need to figure out our priorities. And if we want everything that we want in this town, it's an override. I can't find, anyway. I'm sure we will talk about this a lot more. But anyway.
that was 5-0, yes?
Yeah, 5-0, yep.
Okay, great.
I move for the Select Board to recommend at town meeting, at the special town meeting, the citizens petition, use of stabilization funds to increase fiscal year 26 budget, line 32, fire and salaries.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. 5-0 in favor. Okay, thank you.
Just want to say thank you. Your votes are very much appreciated.
Thank you, Derek, for
Okay.
putting
Thank
this
you,
forward.
You good?
Actually, thank you for stimulating the conversation that we will
Yes.
have shortly.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be the, yeah. We have got the planning board here, so why don't we go through 1, 2, and 3? We'll start with the MBTA Communities Overlay District zoning, Article 1. Who would like to address this, if anyone?
Don't stand up at once.
Well, it may be as simple as you already know.
We already know.
So,
Position on the article.
Well,
You don't need to
they're all here, so maybe just a quick, yeah.
Maybe we can ask a couple of leading questions.
Mr. Gant?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve Gant, 265 West Street, member of the Planning Board, Chair of the MBTA Communities Work Group. The article that you have, that we're voting on tonight is to amend the zoning bylaw, the MBTA Communities Overlay District and zoning map. I did want to bring to the Select Board's attention changes that we are making to the maps. Excuse me, to the sub-district maps. And I will give some, I'll give you some perspective here. We had, earlier this year, or back in April, I believe we had submitted to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, we had submitted a pre-adoption package to EOHLC to review the maps that we had, the map of the bylaw that we are proposing for vote at special town meeting. On May 30th, we got a response from EOHLC indicating that there were some issues with the items that they had, or with the bylaw and with the maps, and that we needed to correct them either at or prior to special town meeting. We reviewed that with EOHLC, with town council. We were able to reduce the number of outstanding items from 8 down to 4. The items that are still outstanding are, as I mentioned, there are 4. 3 of them are primarily administrative in nature. The other one is a substantive item that I will address with you here this evening. Specifically, the EOHLC had indicated that the district maps did not include the rights-of-way in the areas that were being calculated for compliance purposes, and that we needed to include the rights-of-way. And when we're talking rights-of-way, we're talking about for MCOD Tremont, so this is the Island Creek location, the right-of-way that represents the frontage in front of that particular sub-district. So the area of that sub-district would extend all the way through Tremont Street. And then for MCOT Kingstown, same thing. We did not include initially the area that is on the right-of-way, on Kingstown Way, and on the frontage for that particular sub-district as well. What that does, the implications there, that adds area to each of the two sub-districts, which increases, assuming no other changes, that would have increased the area. It would have increased the number of units that we would be permitting to be built. And it would also decrease the density on those units, on those areas as well. So what we did was we had our consultant, MAPC, go back and revise the maps to do two things. Number one, to include the rights-of-way as EOHLC required, but then also to make a commensurate reduction in the MCOT Kingstown district so that we had no net addition of area, and we did not leave any of the densities for either of the two sub-districts changed. So we now have maps that we are proposing to amend for the purpose of the warrant article. We will amend them to reflect the new maps, again, that include the rights-of-way, but then include changes that leave no increase in density, no increase in area, no decrease to density, and then the same number of units that would be permitted at 787.
Okay. Thank you. Questions from the board?
This was a concern at town meeting in November?
November, yeah.
Yes.
The rights away, setting aside why we, okay, let's set aside that. Are we timely enough to amend this now? Does anything need to be filed with the Register of Deeds? Is there any issues here? We're a week away from town meeting.
Deeds.
So town council has reviewed this, and my understanding is that the changes that we're making, since we're not making any increase to the area that we're specifying, we're not making any increase to the units that we would be permitting, and no changes to the density, that it wouldn't require a separate public hearing, that we would simply be able to amend the maps in the manner that we're doing here. Correct.
Okay. All right, that's all I had. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
No,
Okay.
talk about this.
Yeah, right. Anybody from the public wish to add to this? Okay. Why don't we take a vote on number one?
Can I share my thoughts on?
Please. Yeah.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
So, I understand the need, of the Commonwealth to increase the availability of housing. However, I strongly object to the approach taken. The state has pushed responsibilities for creating additional housing onto the communities and not provided the funding required for this increased density to support the demands that will result to the communities. In other words, we bear the costs. We take the responsibilities for doing this. And then moreover, on top of that, they go ahead and threaten us if we don't comply, and remove grants, remove funding. Fiscally, we're in big issues for us, right? And that will have a severe impact to this town. The current administration has shown that they will use their considerable power to make sure that we comply and take us to court if we don't, or come in and do it for us. It's kind of funny that we can't get them to get Holtec to comply with the regulations, but they come after us if we don't, but not after Holtec. But that's a separate subject. Bottom line, I don't like it. I don't support it. But I'm faced with a choice. It kind of feels like I'm cutting off my nose to spite my face if I vote against it. I've got to look at this simply. If I vote to recommend, why would I vote to recommend? And I have no choice. I'm being forced to do this. When I look at it, I know for 100% if I don't support it, if I don't vote for it at the special town meeting, I know that the state will come after us, will take money away that we sorely need, and we don't have the resources. If you want to fight this, it will cost us money, and so it leaves me with no choice but to vote to recommend this. We've tried to do the best thing possible. This is the highest density in Duxbury, It is paper compliance. The state quite happily, which is another ridiculous thing, they're quite happy for us to do paper compliance. So this whole thing is just messed up. So in the end of the day, I have to vote with my head and not with my heart. And so I'm going to vote to recommend reluctantly this article for the reasons I have stated. This sucks, but we have no choice.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Including this sucks, but we have no choice,
Yes.
yeah.
On record.
I got it written down.
Okay.
I would like to echo Fernando's words. It was well said. This is something that is being imposed on us. I cannot vote to recommend town meeting endorse this because it goes against everything I have spent my entire time in this town fighting for. Generations before me have fought in this town to protect and preserve what we have and to plan for our future. And this circumvents all of those efforts. And, you know, I've struggled with this. Do I think that this task force has done their best job at trying to put something forward that, you know, is what they say is least likely? Yes, I think they've done a great job. Does it mean that it won't actually be developed that way? Unfortunately, it could. And I can't risk, you know, I say it all the time, you know, we're the gatekeepers in time, and I have to sleep at night. And if I voted to recommend a town meeting that we roll over and let the state dictate to us how we're going to plan the future of this town, I'm not going to be sleeping. So in good conscience, whether it's my heart or my head, I cannot recommend approval.
Anybody else?
I'd just like to point out, because you know, Amy and Fernando make excellent points. And, you know, from a historical standpoint, this town has done a lot to create what we've come to know as this beautiful rural and historic town, despite a highway going right through the middle of it. I think what's important to understand here is that after the last town meeting, our highest court spoke, and they found that we declare the act creates an affirmative duty for each MBTA community to have a zoning bylaw that allows for at least one district of a reasonable size where multifamily housing is permitted as of right, as dictated by General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3A, and that the Act's delegation of authority to HLC to promulgate guidelines does not violate Article 30 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights. And we further declare that the Attorney General has the power to bring suit for declaratory injunctive relief to enforce Section 3A and its corresponding guidelines. Although they declared the guidelines then ineffective 6 days after that, the EOHLC set forth emergency regulations or regulations, and then subsequently they were allowed under by your Secretary of State, I believe, is the appropriate authority. It's the law, and we swear an oath as Select Board members to abide by the laws of the Commonwealth, I will vote to support this article.
Thank you, Mike.
I would just maybe echo Mike. I think it is the law. I think it will just hurt us if we vote not to recommend it, and it hurt us if town meeting votes it down. We have just spent some time taking money from our stabilization fund because we can't afford the things that we need in this town. And if we don't allow this to go through, if we don't vote this to go through, we risk a lot of money that we could get in grants to help us with the things that we need. So in my good conscience, I could not vote against it. I don't like being told what to do either, but I also really feel that this is the best possible scenario, that the way that they have, the committee has put this together this time is the least dangerous in terms, the least bad, yeah, least bad. And that we would just risk more harm were we to vote it down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I will echo that, Cindy. This group has done a terrific job in pulling something together in a very difficult situation. I've said it before, I'll say it again, there is no proponent for this article. It's an obligation that was forced upon us by the state. There were two tracks that we were going down simultaneously, compliance and looking to get around it through legal process. Well, unfortunately, that legal process train has reached the station, no pun intended, and we tried with appeals, or we tried challenging in court. Not only did we not get our injunction, but the court threw the case out, along with multiple other communities. So while I wish we didn't have to go through with this, like everybody else, I do think this is the best possible option of a range of options. And one thing I'll point out is that there was a great deal of community involvement this time around, to include selection of the sites. And that's not to say that the community necessarily endorsed the concept of needing to do this, but in terms of being able to put this in a place that's least injurious to the community, I think we've done that. And I see this as a question not whether to comply with the law, but how. What is the best way to comply with the law? And I see a no vote here simply requiring us to go back to the drawing board and pull together yet another plan, and another plan, and another plan. So no plan is going to be better than this one, from my perspective. And I've been on the committee, and I can tell you all the blood, sweat, and tears that's gone into getting to this point. So with that, I'm firmly in favor of recommending approval to town meeting for those reasons, not because of the wisdom of the underlying statute, but because of the wisdom of the town in attempting to comply with it.
All right. Shall I give a motion to?
Well, I think Alicia had something, maybe? Did you have, I want to make sure everybody's heard, and then we'll move on.
Hi.
If you're going to add something, that would be great.
Yes, I just,
Okay.
I don't know that this will change anybody's mind, but I just want to be clear that there will be costs, hidden costs, should building happen, that the town would have to absorb. We don't know about grants. We don't know if the state has money for grants. We don't know what we're going to get in grants. And I still am not clear on why EOHLC came back and asked us to include a state road as part of the modification on the map. It really bothers me. I feel like there's something fishy going on, to be honest. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think that there are still some things that have to be fleshed out before this can be fully endorsed. So that's just, I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think, Fernando, you had made the motion.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further
Did I
discussion?
really make a motion?
You made a very passionate motion, as I recall.
But let me revise that motion. All right. I move that Select Board recommend approval at the special town meeting, Article 1, amend zoning bylaws, MBTA Communities Overlay District and zoning map.
Second.
Your motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion carries 4-1. Next is amend zoning bylaws, add new section 410.6, protected use, accessory dwelling ADUs. This is by the planning board. Mr. Dennison.
Yeah, good evening. Wayne Dennison, Vice Chair of the Planning Board and Chair of the Zoning Board. Given the general distaste for the fact that the state and the Commonwealth is dictating what we have to do, I got another one for you.
Yeah, you do.
All right, so in August of last year, the Commonwealth passed what is called the Affordable Homes Act. One provision of that act requires that an accessory dwelling unit, which means another dwelling on real property that is otherwise single-family property, the accessory dwelling unit has to be permitted as of right, meaning there's no discretionary process, special permit process, the process through which we often determine whether these types of changes can be made. The ADU bylaw, everybody calls it the ADU bylaw, the ADU bylaw is intended to comply with state law, but irrespective of whether we do anything, ADUs are now permitted as of February in Duxbury. So the entirety of this bylaw is to act in such a way that we can get the maximum amount of discretion as to what happens here. And if we choose not to exercise that discretion, we can do so, but ADUs will occur. That's state law. There is not a single municipality, to my knowledge, in the Commonwealth that has challenged this state law, and we certainly haven't challenged the state law. So the bylaw, as proposed, amends a section of the bylaw that dealt with accessory apartments. And frankly, it wipes it out. And in favor of that, there are a whole series of regulations with respect to ADUs. The thing that is principally important with respect to ADUs and the existing law in Massachusetts is that not only are ADUs permitted as of right, but you are permitted to rent them. And the rental of ADUs is required by the bylaw. Is required by the state law. Our proposed bylaw, which complies with state law, because the state law literally says that you can, in fact, regulate short-term ADUs, and you can ban short-term ADUs. So the proposed bylaw here, in very large measure, is intended to bar short-term ADUs. And in fact, has a greater enforcement device with respect to this issue than our existing bylaw. As we go forward, if this is passed, the mere advertisement in any forum of short-term rentals, meaning rentals less than 31 days, is conclusive evidence that you violated the bylaw. And that issue has been a very difficult issue to address, and there's a real effort here to address this in a way that makes sense and that the way is enforceable. In addition, there are multiple aspects of our existing accessory apartment bylaw that are no longer permitted under state law. For instance, we limit it to 850 square feet. The new state law says that an ADU can be built to a maximum of 900 square feet or 1/2 the livable area of the existing dwelling, whichever is smaller. So our 850 square feet accessory apartment bylaw is not permissible. We also have a provision in our existing bylaw that requires owner occupancy. That is not permissible under state law. So irrespective of whether we get rid of it, we can never enforce it. There are aspects of it that deal with parking as to, well, I don't think we have anything within a half a mile of a public transit area, but there are 3 or 4 aspects of our existing bylaw that just simply don't comply with state law. They're unenforceable, they can't be enforced. And what we've instead done is drafted what we consider to be the maximum amount of regulation that's permitted with respect to these uses. And the regulation that we're talking about includes site plan review by the planning board. That's not a full special permit, but the planning board is going to take a hard look. They can condition ADUs. They can't deny them, but they condition ADUs. We make clear that our existing setback, height, health, safety, and other rules are still applicable. You still have to comply with septic. All of the other rules are applicable, but now you can get 2 dwellings on one property. And frankly, whether we do this or not, that's the law. Ultimately, we believe that this bylaw maximizes our ability to regulate ADUs within the existing law. We drafted the bylaw in direct consultation with town council. Town council provided us a model. They permitted us to make choices, or encouraged us to make choices as to are we going to regulate this, are we going to regulate that, are we going to regulate the other thing? In every instance, the planning board voted, we want the maximum amount of regulation of these new uses that the state will let us do. And that's what this bylaw does. And that's what Article 2 does. And that's the intention of Article 2. While I'm here, I'm going to talk about Article 3 because it's about the same thing. There are provisions that prohibit certain activities in residential districts. And because ADUs are now permissible under state law, we have to amend that provision of the bylaw. Quite frankly, if we don't amend that provision of the bylaw, it's unenforceable anyway. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Wayne. Mike?
Wait. So I'm curious, and I'm just thinking about functionally. ADUs, you might have an in-law in there, maybe not forever. And then what? Now you have a structure in your backyard. We have a revenue shortfall. I'm wondering what the planning board's view is to why we're prohibiting short-term rentals, where it could be something that we could think about for additional revenue, tax revenue.
I think the principal reason that we are prohibiting short-term rentals is that we had a special town meeting in which people showed up in droves all the way back down Main Street in the high school and voted some enormous number to 83 to bar bed and breakfasts, new bed and breakfasts, which were, by all equivalents, a short-term rental bylaw.
Understood. And I think, that was there was all kinds of ideas for amendments, and there was concerns with the proponent of it. Anyway, there's 63 some odd registered short-term rentals in town here. We have a revenue shortfall of, we're looking at $600,000 in 2027, and we could be taxing that if we were prohibiting it.
If they exist now, one wonders why you are not taxing them.
That's a question for Mary.
Right. That said, What we are barring are short-term rentals of ADUs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Could I ask the mayor to answer that question about why we aren't taxing it?
Yes.
Because we haven't made that decision.
We haven't made that.
Right,
In order to be able to tax them, it requires a town meeting vote.
Right.
right.
And if town meeting has not voted to support short-term rentals in the adoption of the excise tax, then you can't tax it.
That's a subject for another day.
Yeah.
So maybe you can, I've asked this question a couple of times. So for some reason, the state requires us to pass the MBTA
Communities Act.
Communities Act, and adopt zoning. However, in this case, they haven't needed to do that. Why the difference? Why do we have to adopt one and the other one is cast upon us?
The state has already told us that ADUs are permissible in Duxbury according to a matter of state law.
But-
What the state then said is that you have the ability in a reasonable way to regulate them. And what this bylaw provision, this amendment does, is it attempts to regulate them. But why they dealt with this in one way with the MBTA Communities Act and with respect to ADUs, just simply told you what you're doing, I can't answer that question.
All right, that's enough. Anyway, they've created a lot of turmoil as a result. Okay, got it, thank you.
Thanks for all your work on
Yes.
this. The fact is that the state is, again, jamming something down our throats that we probably would have resisted. I think the impacts of this, everybody can understand. It's going to add density, it's going to add kids to the school, more need for services, but it is what it is. And this is now by right situation. And I think that these regulations make this a better situation for the town. So I very much agree with this bylaw. I do question if the committee has thought about the ability, what you see and where there seems to be a bit of a loophole in the law is when multiple dwellings on one lot then get condominiumized. And then it adds to separate ownership. It circumvents traditional zoning requirements, which require 40,000 square feet for one dwelling. Now it's one dwelling plus an accessory. What is in place or what can be contemplated to avoid condoing and multiple ownership of these structures?
The new law already permits multiple ownership.
Good Lord. So, okay. Wrap my head around that one.
Other questions from the board? Anybody from the public like to add to the discussion? Mark, go right ahead.
So ownership of the structure, not the
Can I
land.
just give you this? This is what's going up on the screen. If you don't mind.
Oh, handouts?
And,
Sure.
CMR first would be great.
no, but keep two.
Mark, why don't you introduce yourself while John's passing this out?
So they both,
Okay.
2 of them go to each person.
So what I'd like to talk about is there is a CMR that's been promulgated. It's 760 CMR 71. And when it comes to us as a town creating an ADU bylaw, what the CMR tells us is we are not supposed to be making unreasonable regulations. And if you look at CMR, it's 7103, 3B, 1 and 2, it's 1A and 1B and 2. As far as design standards, any design standard that would not be applied to a single-family residential dwelling in the single-family residential zoning district in which the protected use ADU is located So in other words, if we don't apply a certain standard to get permitted for a single-family home, we can't use it in the ADU bylaw, okay? So I've taken a look at the proposed bylaw, okay? And one of the other things you can't do is you can't enforce local Duxbury Board of Health supplemental regulations to Title V. Okay? And that is in the CMR, it would be 7103 3B4 environmental regulation. So in any event, looking at the bylaw that's proposed, item number 9 says sewage adequate provision shall be made for the disposal of sewage, waste, and drainage, et cetera, et cetera. The bottom line is 760 CMR 7103 3B4. You can't apply Duxbury Board of Health supplemental regulations to the proposed zoning bylaw.
All right, Mark, can you see our eyes doing the, squiggly thing like in the cartoons? You're going a little fast for me. So are you referencing number 9 in the proposed
Yes, I am.
bylaw is in conflict with an unreasonable Oh, it's highlighted, but you're not comparing it to the, okay.
Level 9 in the bylaw.
In the proposed bylaw,
Bylaw doesn't say anything about sewer.
it's highlighted in yellow in the proposed bylaw that John passed out to you, and in
Oh, okay,
red
so that
beneath
is the
that,
okay. I
it
thought that
tells
you were.
you
Oh, this one here.
specifically in the CMR where to find the information that tells you that you can't use the more restrictive regulation.
I'm sorry, so what is this? This is,
So basically, what I think you're saying, Mark, is that you're recommending that we delete item number 9 in the bylaw, is that what you're saying?
Well, I think it's got to be reworded or deleted, one of the two. You can't use the Duxbury Supplemental Board of Health regulations to Title V.
Can I ask the proponents who put this together whether that's true or not?
And town council did vet this,
Yeah, I know.
apparently, yes.
So we've
Just
got-
want to, just.
yeah.
It seems as though, unless I'm missing something, it seems as though nobody read 760 CMR 71. Okay. But moving along, if we go down to the next item, number 11, site plan review. Basically, my understanding of the proposed is that every ADU that's going to be newly constructed is going to be subject to site plan review. So then again, we have to look at the items called for in the proposed regulation for site plan review. Items number D, E, F, G, H, and I are totally unreasonable according to 760 CMR 7103 3B1 and 2. Okay? And by way of example, if I read, again, design standards, any design standard that would not be applied to a single-family residential dwelling, okay? That's in Part A. And Part B, any design standard that is so restrictive, excessive, burdensome, or arbitrary that it prohibits or renders infeasible or unreasonably increases the cost or the use of construction of the protected ADU. We look at the proposed number D under 11, site plan review. A locus map shall be included. We put a locus map on every plan we ever do, but we have never. I've been submitting plans for permitting in Duxbury since 1987, and we have never had to show what the zoning district is in a locus map. C, in order to allow adequate consideration of the surroundings, a plan of the adjacent properties shall be presented at a scale of not less than 1 inch equals 100 feet, or in the same scale as the site plan if practicable. The plan shall show the general characteristic of all lands within 100 feet of the proposed site, including structures, parking area, driveway, pedestrian ways, significant natural resources. This is something we currently do not have to do for a single-family home. if I prepare a site plan for a single-family home, we definitely do not have to go 100 feet from the perimeter in all directions and locate all those features. Right? Then you go to F, the plan shall indicate all.
Mark, hold on a second. Go ahead, Mike.
Mark, this is a lot.
This is a
and
lot.
We're about 8:10 on a very busy agenda. I was just wondering, did you bring these to the attention of the planning board?
I just started looking at this morning.
Okay.
All right, this isn't something we're going to be able to resolve.
Yeah,
this
because
evening.
I just want to, and the reason I'm asking is if they've had an opportunity to digest this, provide their feedback. I don't know if they're aware of any of this. And so it's kind of hard for us to have a real fluid conversation, a back and forth, if we're just learning this tonight.
Also, if I can point out, the board is here to make recommendations on the motion, on the articles that are in the warrant, not what would be amendments to it. So their actions here tonight are to recommend the articles that they have in front of them.
And I understand that 100%.
I appreciate this.
Based on the fact that, again, there are so much in this proposed bylaw that the CMR definitely tells us these requirements are unreasonable, okay? I think there's so many of them that you got to IP this. You're not going to make a couple of simple amendments to get around this.
Mark, it says here, any new you want to delete the statement. Any new construction shall conform to all adopted state and town laws, bylaws, and codes and regulations. Why would you want to delete that? What's more restrictive?
Which number was that?
Number 13B, you've highlighted the following. Any new construction shall conform to all adopted state and town laws, bylaws, codes, and regulations.
And read
You're saying
underneath,
that can't
read
apply
underneath
any
it what's
local
in
code.
red.
You're saying basically you're saying that's more restrictive, and we can't apply that than CMR 760. Is that your statement?
If you look at what's in red underneath that,
Yeah, it
it
says
tells us that 71, you can't apply any local Board of Health regulations that are more restrictive than Title V.
I don't understand
Not
that statement.
rocket
What is restrictive? Any new construction shall conform to all adopted state and town laws, bylaws, and codes and regulations. What you're saying, no new construction shall conform. Is that what you're trying to say?
No.
I don't understand it. But anyway, I think making a good point.
I can kind of tighten this up for
Yeah.
our planning board if someone
Yes.
wants to step up to the plate
Yeah.
here. Thank you very much.
I have no idea what's going on.
Attorney Dennison, did you consider the Code of Massachusetts regulations when you and the planning board developed this?
In the manner in which we considered the code was we asked town council to draft model bylaw and adopted the language of the model bylaw recommended by town council to the extent we thought it was reasonable.
Okay.
To the extent that it is unreasonable and therefore unlawful, it's unenforceable, but it doesn't mean you can't pass the bylaw. So if, for instance, Mr. Casey were able to come in and say, hey, you don't have to, you're going to have to do site plan review. And if he comes in and he says, hey, well, you don't have to comply with the Board of Health regulations as long as it comports with Title V, he can make that argument. You make that argument every time he wants to put up an ADU. And frankly, the suggestion that this is too restrictive is a reflection of the fact that we did a good job.
I agree. And then there's also another, with the way that the state is dealing with our local municipalities, if they don't like our bylaw, they'll kick it. And I would rather vote this in and take that chance, but because I do think having some guidelines is protecting all of us.
So I think Mr. Casey has shared with us that he believes there are provisions that are unlawful.
Yeah.
I think we heard from the planning board how they believe the proposed bylaw better protects the town. We're not going to get into any more details of the argument. I hear you. I think you've made the point that there may be a challenge, or you'd like to make a challenge to this. Is there anybody else who has something to add that's new, that we haven't heard?
John Baldwin, 110 High Street. So, unfortunately, back when Scott Casagrande was chairman, I asked him right out here, outside this door, I said, are you going to make any changes to this new ADU bylaw? And he said, no, we don't plan on doing anything at the time. That's about what he said. So what happens is when you take and you advertise on the agenda for the planning board, we're going to discuss the ADU, I'm not thinking they're going to end up with this. So just to let you know, I built 3, they weren't ADUs, but 2 of them were accessory structures, in which 2 older women, the parents, one of the parents, moved into. Did one on Tremont, did one over off of High Street. Those are the people that end up in these, okay, every single time. So I'm not thinking about short-term rentals. I just don't. No one's going to build, people aren't going to go out there en masse and build $300,000 ADUs just for the heck of it, so they can take and eventually save on their taxes because they're going to rent these out. It's just not going to happen. So that's what's going on. And if you read just one thing, and I'll go. 760 CMR, because that's what's going on here. There's 2 things going on here. Chapter 150, which has to do with the MBTA and this. Then there's CMR, which is Commonwealth Massachusetts regulations. And their statement right from the get-go here is to encourage the production of accessory dwelling units throughout the Commonwealth with the goal of increasing the production of housing to address statewide, local, and individual housing needs for households of all income levels and at all stages of life. And that's what they're trying to do. So just so you know, there's things in this bylaw that are crazy. It's like, put a fence up you can't have a light on the ADU that's going to shine on over near your abutter's property, or the deck shouldn't go over facing the abutter's property, and on and on and on. I mean, it isn't fair for people that want to do this to have to go to court if you take and this gets passed at town meeting. It's not fair to people that want to do this. And a lot of people are going to want to do it. If some older people in town want to downsize, one of the easiest, the reason they're not selling, the reason there's no inventory in town, they have nowhere to go. They're not going to the Pine Hills. It's going to cost them more money. But they could do something with their children who might want to move into their house, and they could build an ADU. Remember, it's 900 max. The ones I built was 700. They were 1 bedroom. There's not going to be children in these going to school. This is what these are for.
Yeah, but they're going to be children in the primary residence. It's going to just mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, but that's not fair.
I'd like to wrap this up. I just want to tweak, so one question I had for Wayne was, and he pointed out that this is, even if this is more if it's seen as more restrictive than the state, they can do it anyway. Do you have a counterpoint to that?
Well, the counterpoint is, it says right here in CMR, you can't. It says you cannot take and make somebody take and go through a process that you aren't making them do for a building permit on a regular principal dwelling.
You're Rainey.
And that's what's going on.
For a second, please.
So, end of story.
All right.
Okay,
thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Just very quickly, because we need to move on.
Yeah.
Pat Carpenter, Summer Street, and the Planning Board. I want to point out, one, our bylaws currently prohibit installing lighting which casts glare onto abutting properties, so that is not a new requirement. And 2, in the 760 CMR, I want to point out where it mentions environmental regulations, it states specifically more restrictive than is required for a single-family residential dwelling in the zoning district in which the protected use ADU is located. That's referring to our existing zoning bylaw.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I think we've heard presentations on numbers 2 and 3.
Yeah.
We've heard from everybody. I will entertain a motion on number 2, please.
I move that the Select Board recommend Article 2 to the special town meeting, amend zoning bylaws, add new section 410.6, protected use accessory dwelling units, ADUs.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0.
Yeah,
Number
I
3,
said
please.
aye.
What's that?
I was still thinking, but I.
Okay. I move that the Select Board recommend Article number 3 to the special town meeting, amend zoning bylaws, add a new section 401.2, open brackets, 6, close brackets, entitled ADU exemption.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. That brings us now to number 6, funding of the design, engineering, and permitting PFAS projects by the DPW and Water Sewer Advisory Board. Mr. Cloud.
Hello, Mark Cloud, Water and Sewer Superintendent. We are requesting $500,000 that will go towards design services. We started out with $700,000 in Article 14 for PFAS prioritization. We ended up with $210,000 left over, which we rolled over into Article 15. Article 15 we're using for pilot testing, OPM services, and then the remaining amount will go towards the design services.
Can't hear when that thing's on.
Okay. Any questions?
No,
Fernando.
I will point out, there was a pretty thorough presentation at a Finance Committee meeting. I was there, you were there, it was available. I don't know if anybody didn't get a chance to see it.
Fernando had a question. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
just one question. So the EPA has moved back the compliance date by 2 years. And I see in your presentation that you still require the $500,000 to meet the new compliance requirement that's shifted by 2 years. Is that right?
Yes, and along with the $500,000, there'll still be a $1 million deficit for the design of the PFAS project.
Okay. So basically, we still need the money to remain and be in compliance by the new date set by the EPA.
Yep.
Amy?
And Candace Martin's putting together a great PowerPoint,
Yep.
which is on the website if anybody wants to look at it.
Thank you.
I guess I'm just, the state is so hypocritical, but the moving of the date, while I realize it provides us additional time for compliance, I hope that we are still working towards a goal of compliance to ensure that there's no PFAS, being distributed in town. So that I think it should be the biggest goal. And yes, we have a little bit of a more wiggle room, but it's always been our promise to the residents that we are not currently, and we are doing everything we can to avoid contaminants in their water.
Yep, and we are currently compliant,
We
and
are.
we've taken lesser measures in order to attempt to maintain that compliance, such as reduction of demand during the
Yes.
summer season.
Correct.
So shut those hoses off,
Yeah.
people.
Stop flossing.
So far. But it's key, I just want to, the intent is to be in compliance with the 4 parts per trillion,
Yes.
Amy.
Right,
Right.
that's
We need to
right.
keep the momentum moving.
Yeah.
Anything further from the board?
Yeah, no,
All right, anything from the public? I don't see anything, so let's have a vote.
I move that the Select Board recommend to the special town meeting Article 6, funding for design, engineering, and permitting PFAS projects.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. Next, thank you, Mark. Next is 7,
Thank you.
4th of July celebration. Who is presenting this one? Rainey?
4th of July. Well, it's 25.
Next year.
Yeah, it's $25,000 for next year. There it is.
Not coming up in a month.
Nope.
No.
For next year.
Next
They're
year.
as simple as you can get.
That's typically an article that's in every warrant, and with,
Yes, ma'am. That is
Mary
correct.
was new at the last town meeting.
Why don't we shut that
Oh,
off?
All right.
Oh, it's because the
Well,
thing
let's
is
shut that
on.
off.
I think you guys are also, Mike and Amy are a little bit far from their mics, so.
These don't,
They don't
They don't
mic.
They don't-
No.
these are the folks
They're
at home.
just pretend so that
Oh,
we
yeah.
feel important.
Yeah, it's working.
They're pretending.
Yeah. Go ahead, Amy.
I was just saying that this is a routine article in the warrant every year. Last year, at the March town meeting, it wasn't in there. I think we were trying to maybe see if it was better in a budget. It's not better in a budget, so we're back to the article.
Any
I
further
move-
questions? No questions? Let's vote.
I move to, for the Select Board to recommend Article 7 to the special town meeting 4th of July celebration.
Second.
Yeah,
Can I just ask one question?
Yes.
I'm going to support this, but I just want to know, for the public's sake, what does this leave us financially, Mary?
Or what, with free cash?
Yes.
So prior to the approval of this, there's $152,000 available in free cash.
So it'll drop us to 127, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, we had a motion. Did we have a second?
We
Had
did.
a second,
Okay,
yep.
So any further
Couple of 'em.
discussion?
No.
We don't hear any?
No.
All right, great. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries 5-0. Article 8, amend fiscal year 26 operating budget for the Rock Enterprise.
We recommend that you indefinitely postpone.
Okay.
All right.
All right, I like that.
Any reason?
No, don't ask.
To
wasn't
indefinitely
necessary.
postpone?
Was it necessary?
I don't know. I just didn't know if we're waiting for more information or something.
No.
No, we are not moving this forward after consultation with DLS.
All right.
Nice.
So I presume
DLS is,
Division of
State
Local Services,
Services.
our regulatory agency.
Yeah.
thank you.
nobody's here to speak to this, I presume. Good. All right, may I have a motion?
Get a motion.
I move that Select Board recommend approval, or recommend Article 8 to the special town meeting, amend fiscal year 26 operating budget ROCC Enterprise,
You get
For
a couple
indefinite
weeks.
postponement.
indefinitely postponed.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. 9, capital budget.
But
There it is, 67,000, just under 68,000,
for, the,
the stuff we got listed in there.
yeah,
Boat engine
boat
and,
engines, like.
what was the other thing? Yeah,
Here it is. Here it is. Here it is.
Sewer, sorry.
needed a little bit more money.
That's the wrong warrant.
So I'll ask the question, where's the money coming
The one
from?
that was handed
Yes.
out to us.
No, I didn't want that one.
Do you mind
I
if
don't know what this is.
Oh, fire away.
to share tonight?
For Christ's sake.
I was
Okay,
reading it
great.
off and
I'm
So
going-
the first item is $7,950. This is additional funding that is needed for the replacement of 2 engines on the Harbor Master's safe boat. This was an article that was brought forward at a previous town meeting. The Harbor Master then went out to bid, and when those bids came in, the first set of bids came in excess of $100,000. So we had to throw those out and rebid it. When the second set of bids came in, there was 1 bidder on the project, and the price was in excess of what was previously appropriated. So the Harbor Master needs an additional $7,950 to complete this project. The funding source for that item is the Waterways Improvement Fund. And the current balance in the Waterways Improvement Fund is $420,315.
Great.
Second item is PEG Access. We're requesting $60,000, and that would come from the PEG Access Fund. And the purpose for this request is for our new CTO, Mike Woodford, he's working with the local scene, or pac-tv as we know it, in order to do an inventory and identify upgrades at some of our meeting facilities in order to improve our recording and broadcasting capabilities. And the first 2 rooms that they are working on or looking at is the large classroom at the Council on Aging, as well as the
Hallelujah.
Allison room at the Council on Aging.
Great.
And how much is in our PEG Access Fund?
And in our PEG Access Fund, $292,041.
All
Right.
People are still paying for cable bills.
Any further discussion?
It's declining, but yes.
Any questions from the public? All right, call the motion.
I move to recommend Article 9 to the special town meeting, capital budget.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. Number 10, supplemental appropriations. This is the last one.
So this is additional funding for two purposes. Number one is for debt service, to true up our debt service budget as we look to permanently finance some of our previously approved projects, which include the DPW facility, the seawall project, PFAS, and a fire breaker truck. So town meeting may recall that a couple of years ago, the town supported the purchase of, and borrowing to purchase a fire breaker truck. And at the time, you've been hearing for years that we've had supply chain issues. This order was placed several years ago, and the truck is now finally ready for us to take possession. And so now we are ready to issue the borrowing in order to finance the purchase of that. The second item is for contributory pensions. The final pension assessment came in from Plymouth County, which requires to true up our pension assessment, our contributory pension line item. So that's
Okay.
the two purposes of this article.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Did the fire breaker truck cost more?
No.
It did not. It was just a delay.
All right.
Anything from the public? I don't see anything, so let's have a motion.
I move the Select Board recommend Article 10 to the special town meeting supplemental appropriations as outlined.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries 5-0. All right, now we get into discussion pertaining to the fiscal year 27 budget planning continued from May 5 and May 19 meetings. We met with Mary to discuss how the planning board, how the select board would like to be involved in the budget process. We articulated an interest in providing priorities. That was followed by a proposed spreadsheet, literally listing everything, giving us an opportunity to rank them if that's how we so choose to proceed. If we would like to approach it a different way, I'm open to that, but where this board has asked for that input, and we have that input, I think it's incumbent upon us to provide the town manager and the finance director with something in the way of priorities that they can work with if we are in fact interested in providing those rather than deferring to them. So does anybody have any thoughts as to how they would prefer to proceed?
I think it makes sense to start with the priorities. I think working from the top down is always easier than from the bottom up.
Okay.
So I have a suggestion.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think the question of what, starting with the balanced budget, then make some recommendations about where we could seek additional revenue. I think we need to talk about both of those things. So I'm happy to talk about prioritization, but I think we have to hit the balanced budget first, which is obviously the most severe, and how we get to that negative, how we address the $600,000 shortfall for 2027.
Yeah.
Right, but even with the balanced budget, I think if we are involved in this process, we need to provide guidance as to what is to be prioritized within that balanced budget.
That's all I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think, it's one thing to talk about, well, if we're going to go for another override, what do we want to prioritize? But also in the balanced budget, if we're going to have to make cuts, significant cuts next year if it's a balanced budget, and what things do we want to protect over other things?
Yeah. Can I maybe just kick off the priorities and see what?
Before you go there, I just want to make it clear that this is not a Hunger Games type situation. We're not saying that people are, we have lots of great employees in this town who provide terrific services, and I don't want our exercise tonight to be interpreted as something in the way of valuing some employees versus others. We're simply looking at the stark reality of where we are financially and determining what the town should be providing first, second, and third in terms of what we're able to pay for. So I don't want anybody to get the impression that if they're higher or lower on the list, that somehow has an implication on how we value them and their service to the town.
Yeah, I would
But I
say
think-
even more than that, that it has nothing to do with the individual employees.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
You know, it only has to do with the services that we think are most important for the residents of this town.
Maybe another way to start the conversation, so there's priorities, but also maybe there's two sides to the equation, right? There's also revenues as well.
Right.
And so maybe there's also, as we provide our priorities to the town manager and the finance directors, we can also ask them to see what options are there, what flexibility there are to increase revenues. I know we talked about that in the Sustainable Budget Task Force, but it'd be good actually if we ask that question again and share it more widely, so that people, we as a select board fully understand what options there are to increase revenues, and also the community as they listen into that. So maybe that's also something that we could also talk about, a priority as well.
Maybe not
What
tonight.
options are we to increase our revenues?
Maybe not tonight?
No, just, there's some things, I think the most one is local receipts, right? And so it's not just giving direction to the town, right? So if you look at local receipts, Mary, for discussion, not tonight, but to start thinking about what flexibility do we have with regards to excise charges? Don't answer tonight.
Zero.
Okay, well, maybe, well, okay,
Or
that
maybe you
answers that
can.
one. Flexibility. There's also the transfer station. Again, are we covering the cost for the transfer station? Rentals. Do we have any options for increasing rentals? The fees charged, recreation, and the beach. I know at the beach that we're running at a loss of 200,000. Maybe there's
Maybe we
work
have to
that the
raise
town could
stickers.
do to look at what are the options to increase and cover our costs there. And then maybe out-of-the-box thinking, sale of municipal land or structures. Is there a possibility for us to gain more revenue, tax income for that? Naming rights to municipal properties. I know we've talked about how do we fund playing fields? Could we sell playing rights? I mean, this is out-of-box thinking, so it's not just on the expenditure side, but what can we do, if anything, to increase the other side of the checkbook, so to speak? What options do we have for increasing revenue? So that's something maybe that we could at some point get into a conversation and share amongst the select board here in the community as to what options. Excess tax you already killed, zero, but what other things could we do in terms of increasing revenue to the town? Anyway, that was local receipts was a big one, and out of the box thinking in terms of revenue.
Okay.
That's my suggestion for ideas to come back.
Okay.
Not tonight,
Definitely,
but
yeah.
in future conversations. yeah.
Okay, did you have a suggestion as to how you'd like us to approach the budget priorities?
Yeah, so there's a few there, actually. So one is obviously public safety. We've talked about that, but I think we need to be clear. That's fire, that's police, that's DPWs, and actually also just as equally important, the schools. I think we have an obligation as a select board to provide those basic services in public safety, fire, police, DPW, and also provide schooling for our for school children in our community. So that was that. The other option was what options do we have for regionalization? That's another area that we could look at. We've been successful in lowering the cost for providing response. How do you call it? The ROC. Is a good opportunity. We've been able to spread the cost over many towns and therefore reduce the cost for providing that service. I know we're working on veteran services, right, with Kingston. So the question would be, what other options do we have for regionalization to offset costs? The other one I was thinking of, are there any options out there to reducing the cost of the services that we provide? For instance, I know that the stickers, the folks used to write down the license plate by hand, but now we have a new automated. I don't know what impact that's had in terms of our expenditures, but are there any options, software upgrades, things like that, we can reduce the cost of the services that we provide, efficiencies. So those are kind of the three areas I was thinking in terms of priorities and options to look at. Regionalization, efficiency opportunities, obviously, fire, police, DPW, and the schools.
Okay, in terms of the ideas that you're proposing, I think, if I'm looking over at Rainey and Mary, those are probably, I suspect those are things that you're already thinking about. That's, I mean, as much as we like to provide direction here.
Yeah, and there are also things that we've talked about some of them in the past too.
Yeah.
But we can certainly revisit that.
Okay, but in terms of this board providing information that's usable to you as you work through the process, would it be useful for us to simply provide either line items saying this is, we would go in this order of departments for funding, or groups saying Group A, Group B, Group C, for larger chunks, or what would be useful?
Well, we
to
know
you?
what our legal obligations are. You had provided a email that showed the first 15.
Yep, Mary pre-populated that for us, things we must do.
Yeah, we're legally obligated to fund the schools as well, so that's the 16th item, if you will. We know that the priority is public safety, including, and that includes the trilogy, the fire, police, and DPW.
Right.
For me, I'm slightly.
Well, can we, let me just
Yep,
let
go ahead.
them finish.
And then we can work from there. We'll see what we've got. I mean, you know the revenue picture because you saw it inside and out. Everybody's well aware. We're not going to shake the tree and find anything new. That's the reality.
Right.
If we had found something, we would have used it by now.
Right.
So we're kind of stuck in that.
Okay. Mary, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say that we are entering this conversation with the context that the goal is to create a balanced budget with the existing revenues that we currently have available.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Amy?
So, I think we're all in agreement that, public safety is at the top of the list. But for me, public safety includes public health. So it's a little bit broader than just public safety. I think health is equally as important, and which, kind of brings me into, environmental health and environmental, concerns. So you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to that. So I guess when I think of public safety, health is attached to that.
Okay. Anyone else? Mike?
Yeah, so I was going over this, and there's, for me, using the existing numbers of the head count for the current, coming into this July 1, that I think would be a goal for a balanced budget, but what that leaves us is about $600,000 short, which is
Actually, 600 and another 400,000.
plus the 400,000.
Maybe $1 million.
Maybe $1 million. So I think we need to start thinking about other ways we can attack some of these fixed costs, because I can't for the life of me see on the, and I remember sitting through these meetings, some of these departments are simply like one or two people. It would be eliminating departments. And that's not something I can suggest. One question I have, particularly in the way that it's been presented to us, is the beach lease. It's at $1 million, and I've supported it and will continue to support it till the day I very much enjoy our beach. But what I'm suggesting is maybe breaking it up between the balanced budget and a contingency budget. The balanced budget being maybe a portion that's for the endangered species program, and the remaining being for the landform. Something that can give the voters a chance to say, is this something we prioritize as a community, as a want, or as some might see as a need? I think it's something worth thinking about. It's a big chunk of money, and I just think that's something we can consider.
Can I speak to
The
that, Mike?
landlord,
Don't
the
they already
landlord may
do that?
want to chime in too.
I understand.
Mike, don't they already do that when they vote in the beach lease and the appropriation to lease the beach? That town meeting makes a statement there by saying yay
I
or
know.
nay.
I know.
But if we
They're already
decrease-
doing that.
And I think they will, but, I think we should, we're thinking about really difficult decisions here.
We are, but I
So where are
don't,
we going to find the
But
other,
town
I
meeting
guess,
could
where are
say-
you going to find the other
I
600,000?
think you have to talk to DBR and say, and if they're going to say, no, we won't, then, I mean, that's not a decision.
Well, then maybe that's for a contingency budget. The town has to decide whether they want to fund that,
So we could if not fund the beach at all.
or
I think
fund
that's-
a portion of it, and
Well, I
then
don't, that would
guarantee
only
a
be if
portion of it.
DBR would agree to funding a portion. I don't know how that works. We
I
could
don't
use
know.
a portion of the
It's an
beach.
idea,
It's an idea.
but I'd love to hear how else we're going to find that 600,000 or $1 million.
Maybe we get to rent the parts of the beach where the birds.
No,
are.
I mean, setting aside that, if we don't do something like that, where else are we cutting?
Could I ask a question that's probably been asked a million times? I mean,
Right
if we're
ahead.
getting down into the nitty-gritty, and I think it's hard to do that. And, you never want to pick on some departments, but, there are, again, priorities. And so if we're to look at the pool budget, we know that the pool is a struggle. We have come to terms with the fact that the pool that doesn't pay for itself, and we as a community have decided to accept that and subsidize it. And I'm sure it's been looked at, but I'm going to ask it again. Has the idea and has the numbers been looked at if you were to lease the pool out to another entity to run it and manage it? Do we know, has that been looked at in the past?
Not so much leasing it. Third-party operator, I don't recall.
I'm just wondering, it is.
We'll get it in the notes and we'll take a look.
Okay.
The likelihood of that, given that it continues to not generate
Money.
Revenue,
The revenue, sorry,
the
revenue.
likelihood of anybody willing to bid on running that
It can
is
be
going to
tough.
be low.
The only, building on that, the North Hill Golf contract that comes up at the end of December 2026. I know it's something in there, but there's money generated from that, right?
Yeah, and the portion that we received just went up a lot.
It did. Has it gone up?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. They have corrected.
Okay.
So those are numbers that we don't know.
We
So we
haven't
lease
seen
that,
that.
we lease the golf
It
course
is.
to someone to run it, and then we receive revenues from what,
Yeah, we get a percentage of the gross.
Yeah.
so
No.
maybe,
Or not.
No,
maybe,
no.
No.
They give
They
us
give
a
us,
fee.
they give
We
us
get
a
a
pre,
fixed- a
excuse me,
fixed
yeah, a
price.
fixed amount, that's
6
right.
months. I think it was $100,000, right?
It's more than that.
Is it more than that? How much is it?
Yeah, You saw it when we signed the contract.
That's right. So we signed the contract, yeah. But the more they make, the more we get?
No.
No.
It's a bit.
No.
I didn't think so, right?
FY '25.
Yeah,
FY '24.
yeah,
It was 128,000.
right,
FY '25, it went up to 156,000.
right.
FY '26,
Yeah.
it's going to go up to 162,000. And FY '27, it'll go up to 171, and then it tops out at 180.
so it's a
at which
formula
time-
that's built into the contract.
It
Yeah.
is,
Yes.
it is a formula based on a multi-year contract that we have signed with them.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, that's right. But the contract expires at the end of December 26, and so there's an
And we
option
haven't, there's an exercise option in there for
Yeah.
us to extend it.
if we want to.
Correct.
Or we could, or negotiate the terms.
We would have to go back out to bid,
To
which
do
is
that.
exactly
Okay.
what we did.
And is that a year-round lease?
Yep.
Yep.
And what do they do? Do they serve food, or is it a
Oh, yeah, yeah,
function
yeah.
room
It's
during the
Oh,
winter?
yeah.
Clubhouse,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
bar,
Do we know how much
Events.
money they're making?
yeah, recreation tracks that.
Okay. Anyway, so that just, again, I'm not saying tonight, but maybe that's something along the lines of.
Would you like to
revenue.
return ownership back to the town and run it yourself? Is that
No,
what you're
no,
suggesting,
no, no,
Fernando?
no.
Yeah.
I know a guy.
We would
No,
not,
yeah,
we would not recommend that.
Fernando would like to do
That's-
that.
No, the last time we tried that didn't work too well. But, no, I mean, if they're making, there could be opportunities to split the pie a little differently.
So if I can just direct us back to priorities. So I value your input on the additional revenue. That's definitely an important component of all this. But we've asked for the opportunity to provide input on priorities to our full-time professionals.
Yep.
Who are then going to be tasked with taking that forward, actional, whatever the word is, taking it forward. So what's our pleasure in terms of providing that guidance? Want to just go through?
Yeah.
All right. So Mary provided us with some must-haves, which makes the first 14, 15 easy.
Yeah.
All right. For myself, and I know we've all done this independently, I've grouped them because I found when I was trying to do a forced rank, it's really hard because a lot are really on the same level, in my opinion. And again,
You're
not.
looking at, Brian, which one?
This is just my own. This
Oh,
is
your own. Okay, that's
yeah,
fine.
I just,
Yep.
my printer couldn't print that wide. So in addition to the must-haves that Mary put together, like you, I also had fire, DPW, and police. I think those are all hand in glove in terms of necessary components.
And the schools, right?
But how much?
But what does,
How much?
what does that mean?
Yeah, what does it mean?
Well, we're going through priorities in terms of, then you can determine.
Does that mean when you're talking about these departments and you've now listed 3 priorities
Yeah.
and if there's consensus, does that mean restoring the positions that were reduced, continuing the funding based on what we talked about here?
I had not gotten
expanding
that far
the
when I
funding?
was.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Well,
I thought we're talking
can
level
explain that.
funding.
So
Level funding,
if we're
right,
talking
okay.
about level funding, we don't have the money to restore the force. That would have to be in a contingency budget.
Well, hold on, but how can you say, can you just say level funded?
I
So-
know, because I.
Wait,
have a-
wait. So what you're saying?
I mean, if
Wait,
we,
wait.
a balanced budget, I can
Well, I
clarify
think we've got to
the
be
words.
careful. If we say level funded, we're saying basically, we want you to provide the same amount of services
Yeah,
for less
all right,
money.
so I'll clarify.
For less money.
Fernando, can I finish?
Yeah,
All
sure.
right, so I was talking, if we're talking about a balanced budget,
Yep,
we have a real problem here.
We do.
Yeah.
We're $1 million in the hole with the head count that we have right now.
Yeah.
correct.
So we cannot do the RIFs, the 13 RIFs on the town side, in a balanced budget unless we can find $1 million from the money tree out back. So we need to either cut, but to your question about a RIF, that would absolutely be a priority for me in a contingency budget. We absolutely have to do that.
Contingency budget, but if we're setting
We
our.
cannot do it in a balanced budget. I don't think we can, unless you cut
I don't
out half
see
the
how-
other town services.
I think we have to set the priorities first, which is, what are our, and I think we all agree to them. I don't think it, I know that you keep throwing the schools down there as number 2, but the schools have, first of all, it's under the statutory requirement to fund them.
Yep.
And they have a school committee that advocates for them, and I'm not, while we are able to, I struggled last year with input that, I felt would have gone far in trying to get that override, and it goes nowhere. So it oftentimes feels frustrating, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So, I think that we all agree that public health and safety is a priority. It's the priority. So as Mary's saying, what does that mean? So does that mean that we're going to fund it up to the level? And so then therefore, where do we need to find, how much money do we need to find and where do we need to
$1 million
find it? Is it over $1 million or just
A
$1 million?
million.
It depends on what your decision is. So let's stop focusing on dollars and focus on priorities, right?
Okay.
Because
Yep.
the strategy is then going to translate into a budget.
Right.
And we shouldn't be making the delineation right now, because if you can't answer for me that the strategy should be to create a balanced budget with the existing reductions in force remaining in place, or whether we should add staff, we can't figure out what dollars need to be there. So I need to know what the strategy is that you're proposing so that we can then translate that into dollars.
Right, so, okay, let me offer something out there. Then for the balanced budget, we basically, because we've already, more than likely, I suspect the vote is going to be positive in the fires, the restore, the reduction of forces, basically fund the 2 2 firemen and the 2 policemen, and then we need to fund the additional staff, that reduction in force for DPW. And the schools are also, for me, a priority. We need to look at restoring their risks. I'll offer that up as
I'm not
And
sure
then
what
what
that
you'll have to
number
do
is.
is absolutely decimate
The rest of the town.
We can do
many
that.
other, decimate's a good word, right, yeah. Many other programs in town, whether it's a pool, whether it's a library, whether it's taking away that beach lease, there's $1 million right there. Done deal. We don't go to the beach. You know, I mean,
And I'm not willing to do that.
so, and I'm saying, you know, so that it's, you know.
Yeah, no, and I think your point is well taken. If we, I know we're not supposed to look at numbers here, but if we restore the reduction in force, it's 906,000 for the schools. And we already,
It's 1.7 million, I can tell you the
I
number
thought
already.
that was questionable.
It's
I'm
basically-
I'm
it's somewhere
confused
around
on school
1.5.
money, So I
1.7.
don't want to go there.
now we've increased the number to 1.5 million in the, so again, where are we going to find that? I'm just interested. I don't even know if we have enough on the town, in.
I don't know, I
departments.
don't know exactly what you just said there. You,
If we restore.
of restore.
In the balanced
Then you're
budget,
increasing the amount that we're off. yeah.
we're now,
Yeah,
where you got the deficit of 600,000,
Yeah,
plus,
plus the police and fire,
yeah.
Yeah.
plus the 900 for the schools.
yeah.
So that's,
Was it 900 for the schools? I thought
yes.
that there was some
It was
confusion.
900 and 6,000, 906, 551.
The schools are there.
I know. So, I don't know what the schools are looking for, if they're willing to even talk about it today.
Before we get input from
From any
others at
department.
the
Yeah, I
moment.
think we
Yeah.
need to.
I mean, there's other, oh, I'm sorry. go ahead.
So here's how I see it.
Yeah,
The manager and finance director have an obligation to put together a balanced budget. We're talking fiscal '27, all right? So they're going to do that. We've asked to provide priorities, right? So that's what we're here to do. We've kicked this 2 meetings now. This is the 3rd meeting. We're going to provide input. Now, we've been asked by the finance director, does this include restoring RIFs? So I think we need to answer that. I mean, this is the only time we can talk about it as a group, is in
No, I
a
don't think,
public meeting like this.
I don't think it does, Brian, because it's, our deficit is more than it was this year. I mean, it could be restoring some if we're prioritizing safety in the schools, maybe, but it doesn't provide us anything to restore anything else, if even those. I am all in favor of restoring them. I am, and of fully funding the schools and the public safety and whatever, but I don't know. I mean, $1 million is a hell of a lot of money, and, what are we going to do, close the library down? I mean,
So we thinking like a 5A, 5B approach?
That's
we
for
did
you
last
guys
year?
to decide.
Are you?
I've heard you just
Are
mention
you?
it several times.
Well, that's what I'm
we
asking,
are.
yeah.
Is that the
Yeah.
framework that you
Oh,
are
shoot
passing
me.
to us?
All right.
We can change the number.
Are we comfortable with the 5A, 5B approach?
I think we need to lay it out. We need to understand, what a balanced budget looks like.
yes, we do,
Yes.
yes.
We need to understand that.
With public safety and health.
With public
as the
safety
priority,
and
the
health and
schools as a
everything.
priority,
The
we can
schools.
show you that.
And then
Exactly.
we've got to see what it looks like.
But to prioritize the schools, does that necessarily mean putting the RIFs back? Because that's where I'm struggling. Because again, I'm prioritizing health and safety. I believe that equals putting back those 2 positions. I think the town has spoken. I think the town is going to want to do.
Which 2 positions?
four
The
positions.
2
and
police,
2.
2 fire.
Yeah.
What about the DPW?
What about DPW?
Because there's 5 in DPW and then a total of 13.
And maybe there's some wiggle room in DPW. DPW is very, they're important to me, but maybe not quite, maybe there's some compromise there. With the schools, to just say, yes, replace their RIFs, I'm not there yet. Certainly, the schools are a priority. My kids went to school here, everybody's, it's very important, but I feel a little less able to have that conversation because we don't have control over that money in any way. So if you are to appropriate money back into there or make that a priority, it doesn't necessarily mean that the money gets spent that way.
I understand that, but answer me, what is our legal obligation as a town with
For what?
regards to education?
You're legally required to
We
fund the
need to
schools.
provide, we
That's
need to
not a
fund the
question.
schools, right? Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that we
Right.
not fund the schools, Fernando.
But
I'm
it's a
not.
priority. Because we're legally required, we have to find money to fund the schools, and we need the input from the schools to tell us how much money that they would like, that
Absolutely.
they need. We need to hear from them.
Exactly, but I'm saying that maybe to prioritize them to the level of restoring the RIFs is, I'm not there yet, personally.
I think we need to give the town manager and the finance director direction, priorities, right? So if you want, well, let's just give them the priorities and ignore the schools and see what the number comes up. And I don't know, but they need something to work with to create a balanced
And I
budget.
think we're working towards that.
I think we can prioritize the schools without giving them an amount at this time.
We have
But
to.
you have to.
Respectfully, we have to.
Respectfully, can we get somebody from, if you don't mind,
Well,
sorry.
hold on,
Okay,
not
right.
yet, not
Oh,
yet.
I'm not allowed to, sorry.
Hold on, I want to make sure we're good on this end.
Yeah.
So would it be useful, I'm just trying to get something done here tonight,
Yeah.
right? So would it
It's
be?
not easy.
No,
It's not easy.
well, no, exactly.
It's made worse.
Would it be useful for us to provide you with, it seems like we're having hesitation being able to give you line items and saying, okay, we're going to force rank. Right? I'm not hearing anybody saying they're willing to
We'll
force
do it.
rank.
I'm actually,
We'll
But
do
I'm
it.
saying but that's what I'm saying. You
It's
guys
what
have
we
to
do
do it
every
anyway.
year.
So can we provide, at the very least, some general priorities that will allow them to then go forward? And then we won't be in a position to second guess and say, no, you shouldn't have done those priorities, right? Because that's the purpose of what we're doing right here, right now.
I
May
think
I?
one of the things that
just a
we're
sec.
going to have to do when we do priorities, though, is give them the priorities. If we're saying we want to fully fund, emergency services and schools and whatever, then what are our priorities for the things we want to cut? What are they?
Okay. Mike?
so my guidance is no additional heads other than if this citizen's position passes, we'll add those. As far as what I would prioritize, I would suggest that our professionals here determine the least painful,
Yep.
least restrictive on our operating our town. You live with it every single day. You work with our employees. You know how this town operates. We are a board of directors here. I think we've had an opportunity to go through every single department, had them in here, understood all the pain that last year's budget caused if we didn't pass a contingency budget. It's worse next year, but I would like to see a similar balanced budget, granted with now $1 million in the hole, that is least painful on the operations of this town. And I know that's a really hard loaded thing.
Try, and I just want to clarify, so you do want to include the 2 police positions and the 2 fire positions that are contemplated?
I will,
On
if
Monday.
the town meeting
Yeah.
wants those 4 positions.
Okay.
Using our
Stabilization.
stabilization funds, I will honor that.
Okay, and that's it? You don't want any of the other RIFs built in?
We
either
can't
on the school
afford, we
side
can't
or-
afford it
Okay, that's fine.
right now.
I have that
I will
part.
absolutely, so from where I would like to see a contingency budget, the number one priority needs to be on restoring that reduction in force. I've
For
heard.
both sides of the house, school.
Both sides of the house, as long as, and I say that with the schools, I don't know the impact of not funding that reduction in force at this point.
I will be happy to tell you.
And I would like to hear. So if you don't need, if you need more, if you need less, I'd just like to hear it. I want to be fair with you. And let us, we're not, the school committee, I don't know how this is played out and how this will play out. I've talked to Mary about the town side and how this is playing out through July 1st. I don't know how it's playing out in the school side. So if you don't need the whole 900,000 in a contingency budget, please let us know. If you need more, let us know. But that's, I think, I really respect our New England form of government here, this linear form. And I'd like to hear from our elected officials and our professionals as well. And not let us try to guess what that 900,000 went to. So I could talk to the town, I could talk on the town side pretty well. But I'll leave it at that. I think we absolutely, I heard all these departments make their cases. I really don't need to hear them again on the reduction in force. I supported it and will continue to support it.
Okay, other thoughts?
Well, I think, I agree. I mean, I don't know. No, yes, I have a lot of thoughts. I should
Okay.
just not.
Well, it's important because we asked pretty loudly to have input on the priorities.
Yep.
And I guess I'm just not hearing them tonight. I'm hearing we're passing the buck back to the town manager and the finance director, which is where it was.
Well, do you want more beyond the,
I'm happy.
beyond the, fire, police, DPW? Are you looking for priorities beyond that?
Well, I want to entertain what this board has articulated. We felt that we didn't have enough input into the fiscal 26 5A.
Balanced budget,
Right,
correct.
balanced budget.
Yeah.
So this is our opportunity for fiscal 27.
Part of it's,
We've had opportunity to do homework on this, so this is our opportunity now, tonight, because the clock is ticking for fiscal 27, even though we're not even in fiscal 26 yet. But for our two professionals here at the table to move that forward. So, I mean,
Right.
we're the ones who wanted it, so here's our chance.
yeah, so part of this, it's difficult for me to visualize, put it down on paper. How much is it going, what is our total? How much is it going to cost to do the safety stuff? How much is it going to cost, what was said tonight with the restoring the risks, if the town meeting votes on that, and then the schools, how much money's left after that, and after the things that we're required, to fund. So, I mean, I have priorities on my list, and I don't know if the harbor master comes under public safety, but I would assume, right? And so that, that goes in there. And I have priorities based upon what I think might be most important to the town. I think the libraries are more important than the pool, for instance. I mean, I can give you all that list, but I don't know that that's helpful right now.
It's not going to be helpful if I'm going to get 5 different versions.
Right.
Right. So I'm not sure how to go about doing that and not being able to see how much money it's going to cost for the things that we've already said and how much is left over.
I think, and I know this is putting it back, but the budget comes from the town manager, by our Town Manager Act. And at least seeing a quick draft of it and seeing the cold reality of what a $1 million reduction, while holding on to the current staffing of the police and fire is going to do to the rest of the town, will give us a real opportunity to understand what the trade-offs are here.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's set up the way it is, because he's the CEO of the town.
Right, well, that's sort of what I was saying.
So,
Can I just ask before you go?
Yeah.
So, to your point though, Mike, are we then going to look at that draft and tell him all the reasons why we think it's wrong and what he needs to do it over? Because that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
sounds like.
Because that's not really fair. I think we need to, if we're gonna provide that feedback, we need to do that now.
Well, it's not fair, none of this is fair. But what it gives, why I say draft, and this is why I suggested we get this earlier in the fall, is so that we can provide some input, not just sit here and complain about how awful I think we all understand how difficult this is gonna be, but to give him some feedback before that December date,
Yes.
so that we're walking into something in December that we're all on board with, as opposed to just receiving that then and then walking into the holidays and then we're on a freight train to town meeting.
But wouldn't it make sense for us to give him some milestones or guideposts to say, these are the sorts of things we're looking for?
I think we're doing it right now. By adding those 4 positions to police and fire, that's a big one. Even just taking an approach this year resulted in reducing the force on both police and fire. We're saying keep it at this current level plus 2. And then we're still going to be and we're starting with the $600,000 deficit. This is going to be really painful. Really, really painful.
I agree, and I think, for me, I try to make it as general and not, I don't want to get down into the minutia and start saying, okay, well, this person's we could take 50 from here and 100 from there. That does not seem like what is going to be helpful. What I think is helpful is to set the priorities. Like Mike just said, it's a huge thing to say we prioritize the police and fire positions and want to keep those in. So then what that means to me, in the hard reality of whether this is a town budget or your household budget, is that you got to find the money somewhere else. And honestly, after public health and safety, I feel like any department is eligible for efficiencies, cuts, whatever it takes to get to that number, because that's where we're at. I don't know any other way.
Anyone else? I don't think we, if you can go to the mic,
Go ahead,
Betsy,
please.
So what I hear from all of you is a concerted effort to provide guidance so that the people that we hire professionally to do this have a sense of what you would want to see as an end result. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Stop talking about numbers, because the numbers are all going to change. The numbers are useless. The numbers are, other than the fact that we have a rough idea that we have about $1 million shortfall going into the planning, talking about 900,000 or, stop. What I think they need, and I'm in the cheap seats, right? But what I think they need is to hear from the board of directors that we would like you to provide us with a balanced budget, being mindful of the fact that this board would like you to retain as much as you can in public safety. I don't know what public health is. Public safety, and including the DPW and education. And then, give us your best proposal for what, based on what is left for the rest, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying.
Yes.
And that's enough.
Yeah.
Because
We've
if
done
you
it.
start digging tunnels now, you're going to just make it impossible for them to do their job. The one thing that was missing last year was the silence after the balanced budget was presented early on as to, hey, you know what? We're feeling as though the cuts are too strong in public safety. Can you go back and work the numbers to retain that? And well, how does that look? Because I know they would have done it, but nobody asked them. And I was at every meeting. So now I think that if you can just give them that overview of retaining that and let them do their job, maybe with the caveat of, doing the least harm to other departments, on the road, even though there's going to be harm done.
Yeah,
That's what I'm hearing.
You've heard perfectly well. That's exactly what I'd like to see.
I don't think we even need to give them those caveats because,
They don't want to do any harm to the town.
No.
and there's going to be harm. There just is.
Yep, I think it's quite clear.
So is the extent of our guidance, public health and safety?
Yes.
And schools. And we have to provide education, right? That has to be in there.
Well, the legal stuff are the must-haves.
Yeah. Well, here, let's hear from the chair of the school committee.
So Chair of the School Committee, Kelly Bresnahan, Pine Lake Road. What I'm hearing is that for some people, the schools aren't a priority. Perhaps, unless I'm hearing that wrong.
No, they are.
The schools were devastated last year. We lost 18 employees. We've cut sizes. We have cut to the bone. We have looked at absolutely everything, as have all the departments. And I agree with public safety and everything. If the schools are not, it used to be level service. If we can't even get level funded, because now we're out $1 million, right? We're starting in the hole. It's going to be really detrimental to the students of Duxbury. And we are, and I'm on the negotiating committee, negotiating a new Unit A contract. And these are teachers who, per the last contract, were told that we would do a salary survey, and that would be part of the negotiation. And guess what? That was in the contingency budget, and they didn't get it. So we're already down, bare bones, as much as we can be. And I just want you all to make it perfectly clear to the teachers, the staff, and the town, where they stand.
Yeah.
All right.
So I am unclear,
Me too. So,
and I
we need to hear, what do you want?
Yeah, and I have a question at that point, maybe Kelly or somebody. So when you say you're $1 million in the hole, I'm kind of, I mean.
the town.
Oh, yeah. I didn't
Okay,
know.
not
So
you.
when I say no reduction in force, I'm saying townwide, in the balanced budget. With the contingency budget, let's get back to where we should have been going with restoring that reduction in force.
I
So,
think that ship has sailed. All the people that we cut last year, there's no way we're gonna get those people back.
no, I mean, at least funding it. I mean, if you
We're
don't
gonna
want
fund
them.
it.
Can't, she needs
Positions
to,
for the school.
you need to
Yeah,
get
I
up
think
to
we
the
need to understand what it is the ask is.
microphone.
What's the ask?
Well, we will have a different.
Can you go
Microphone,
to the-
please.
Microphone.
And so the people at home can hear
And it's
you.
also
Yeah.
June 6th, so I'm not expecting a full
Right.
understanding of the ask.
It's the 9th.
Superintendent Klingerman.
There. I think what would be helpful for us, we are 18 positions down going into FY '26. If we have to do a level funded budget, we automatically have contractual obligations. So if
Correct.
we're level funded, we are going to be coming in, looking at additional cuts. I think right now, we don't know what may need to be restored until we experience what FY '26 looks like. But if we have to make additional cuts coming in at a level funded budget, when we're preparing our budget, that's going to, just with the natural rollover and the contractual obligations we have with salaries that are going up, we're going to be looking at cuts again. So I think if we have the directive of a similar situation than we had last year of doing what a level funded budget, level service budget, and a contingency budget would look like, that would be an exercise that would be able to have clear descriptions of what the school department would be functioning at.
I know we use the
Yeah,
word level funded and level service. I think for our purposes, at least for mine, is understanding what it would cost to restore the head count in the schools.
I don't know that we're looking to restore the head count of the 18 positions that were lost.
No, I'm sorry.
Because some of them were due to enrollment. We
I-
did have several, we had different cuts. We had some reductions that were due to enrollment.
Yeah.
Then we had additional reductions that were due to the override not passing. So I think that we need to experience what our functioning looks like with the reductions before we can make
Yeah.
recommendations for what would need to be restored.
I
But I
misspoke.
think that if we also had a contingency budget scenario, we would likely not be asking for the same things that we did in this year's override budget.
Just a sec. Cindy.
And
Yeah, so what I think, my recommendation,
I asked it
my
wrong.
recommendation
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go
Hold
ahead.
hold on a sec. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
to
Cindy.
Rainey and Mary would be to ask the school for a level services budget as one of my top priorities, so that it's not level funded, because as you're saying, they would lose more services
And-
that way.
and-
But, so my priority, and I don't know how other people here, but for, again, that is more money, I understand that. But, yeah.
And that was my question. I said it wrong. I know we use the word level funded, level served. For the balanced budget, what it would cost to maintain your headcount as of July 1st.
For level service,
Level,
Okay,
level
yes,
service,
And that's level service?
yes.
Okay, in your,
in your parlance.
I just don't want to get that mixed up with, like, we're trying to maintain, like, the Mandarin department.
Right, level
I want it to be
funded would be
headcounts.
for us to have the same dollar amount in FY '27 that we had in FY '26, which would result in probably additional
Right.
10 to 20 FTE reductions again.
So level service then.
Right, so I think, if it was being, portrayed that is not a priority, your budget, that's clear, that is not where I'm coming from. Where I'm coming from is getting to a place where I think it's reasonable what you're saying. You may not need that head count, the RIFs replaced. You're managing, you're changing, you're creating new budgets and new head counts, and that's the reasonable response. That's what I want to hear. I mean, I don't think, I'm not ready to prioritize putting back the RIFs for the school, and which is clearly what they're saying they're not ready for us to prioritize, or what they're not prioritizing as well. So I think when I was trying to take the schools out of it a little bit, it often seems to me that we have the school budget, which is the lion's share of the town budget over here, and we've got the town budget, which is so different because if you appropriate money for, the town clerk, that money goes to the town clerk. And the school, we don't have that. So it often feels like, for me, to separate those two budgets. I understand that we have to fund it. I understand it's our obligation. I'm not suggesting that we not fund the schools. What I'm suggesting is for us, when we get down into this minutia, which is where we're going to have to go to figure out what gets cut to fund the 2 police and the 2 fire, that's how I'm trying to separate this. So, thank you.
So before I start writing stuff down, I just want to clarify. So it sounds like, but I haven't heard from all of you, the first thing that you seem to be heading toward agreement on is level services for the school. Is that correct?
I do. Level service for the schools, definitely. For the balanced budget.
You don't have
Are
to
they
vote it.
there?
I'm just looking for a consensus, because
Yeah.
then you can react to it later.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
See
if
what it looks
needed,
like.
if that's what, I mean,
Okay.
I think
I
we're
think
early in
it's
That's gonna
the
be-
discussions.
Cuts elsewhere.
That's
It's
okay.
going to be
We can-
have to
cuts
look at it.
elsewhere.
Yeah, that's
We got to
fine.
look at it. I
We're
mean,
just
and
gonna-
is that what the schools are
I just
asking
need to
for?
get
I'm
the
still not
themes
clear
down
what they're
here.
asking for, so, all right.
So level service for the schools, and then let me just double check here. You also said you wanted to make fire, police, DPW, harbor,
I don't think that
and
we.
health, because those are, you wanted to make those priorities, including the +2 in the FD and the +2 in the PD, correct?
And that would also have to include the rock. But that's a,
Yeah, you're right. And the rock, okay.
But we haven't
Well,
made
the
any reductions to rock.
So,
We didn't.
to be
So-
clear, the only RIFs that I suggested we should prioritize would be the ones, if it's town meetings, will on Monday night to use our.
That's all he included.
Yeah,
That's
that's
it.
all I got.
Other than that,
I didn't add anything else.
I agree to that, but I thought
It's-
you just said DPW, you're not restoring the riffs on that.
Nope.
and I'm
Okay,
not
okay,
suggesting
okay.
adding refs to that.
So basically, level service, fiscal budget
Level
year.
service for the schools, and
Yep.
then,
Level service for,
I hadn't said that, because that's different.
let me just think about that
I'm
for a
just trying to
second.
get your priorities straight here, because you had said you wanted FD +2, PD
Yep.
+2, DPW, harbor, health, and rock.
What's health?
Amy?
Well, public health, for me, again, it's Board of Health. I don't want to defund our Board of Health. Conservation efforts, I don't want to defund the Conservation Commission. It's what keeps our water clean and our marshes clean. And So again, for me, it just public safety and public health kind of run hand in hand, so that's what I was.
Does everybody concur?
But Board of,
So
We-
Board of Health is regulatory.
yeah.
Conservation is more land use and planning. So that, conservation is not considered part of public health at all.
Well, I think for me, it just runs parallel. I just think of environmental issues, and when I think of environmental, I think of conservation.
It's a one-person department, right?
Yes.
Two.
Okay, two. Well, I don't think we'll be
No, 2.5 actually, because
2.5?
there is a conservation agent, there's an administrative assistant, and a part-time land use.
Part-time.
Bill
land
guys.
use.
Yep, Mike.
Well, I think really, well, I don't know.
Not making much headway.
No, we're not. These are the
Well-
value choices that
Yeah, but
We-
why don't we just go
you guys
ahead?
to articulate.
Right. We're not going to solve it tonight, right? So can we basically, we got level service for the schools. We just articulated Board of Health and all that. Put those numbers in and see what happens. And then we have to iterate.
So basically, we're saying, do what you were doing before, right?
No,
So-
no.
Okay, let me ask you the loaded
No
question.
laughing from, honestly, this is really annoying, okay?
Let me ask you the
We are
loaded-
making, I just
Sorry,
gotta make
go
a
ahead.
point.
Please.
We've never done this before as a select board, right? We normally, the town manager does his business, then we go to the finance committee and they do the business and school committee. This is the first time, and it's a very difficult conversation. We as a board are trying to provide direction. We will not get it perfectly the first time around, but we are providing direction which we never did before.
Agreed.
All right?
I got
And
one.
it's painful, and it's sometimes funny, and what have you, but we are providing direction, and we've started the process. Let's see what the numbers come back. They'll do a fantastic job, and then I'm sure there'll be more discussions, because they're gonna get really ugly.
Ready?
Thank you. As we do this, do you want us to build a contingency budget to go with it?
Certainly
I think we need that.
Yes.
We're gonna need an override.
Yes.
That's what we need to
Okay,
know.
so that's the direction. Okay, and so the next step, though, is that the departments need to weigh in. and-
Correct.
And put together what they know how to run their operations. They know what services they
Yep.
provide.
Correct.
They know what staff they need, and they know what expenses and vendor contracts they need to engage in. So the departments are going to now need to put together their budget. They're going to need some context, and what I've just heard was that we've provided context of level services to the school department, but not necessarily to any other department.
Correct.
So what guidance is given to the department heads in order to achieve your objectives?
Okay, I'm really getting confused. We said prioritize fire, bring the two risks there, okay? So, Rob, we prioritize fire. What do you need to provide service with that number? I mean, that's what we're asking to do. With fire, with police, we said we tore the two.
Right.
Provide services with the two and with this current head count, right?
That services part is the trick.
Yeah.
Because the dollar amount for people is one thing, but to provide the service, it increases year after year after
Okay.
year. So that's what we need to know.
So what
Do you
we're-
want level
Has to be
funding
level
or level
funded.
service?
It has to be
Okay.
level funded. We don't
But
have
if
the
it's
money
level
for the
funded,
service.
we got to be careful,
Less
because
than
level
level
funded
funded.
means basically paying people the same sort of salary, but providing the same service, all right? So we're basically underpaying employees. You cannot do that. You have to basically, you have to comply with legal, if you have a contract, you have to give people pay rises. And we've got to compete, we've got to maintain, you can't expect people to do the same amount of work for less money.
Right.
That is wrong.
That's how we end up with a
No, I don't think anybody's suggesting
But that's
that.
what level funding is. Level funding
No.
means the same,
Cuts.
it's
No,
basically.
it means cuts.
There we go.
Right,
And-
some
and-
people get more money and some people get let go.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But the work
Right.
doesn't go away. So
Right.
The
now
work
you've
doesn't
taken
go
a
away.
three-person department down
Right.
to a two-person.
So what work goes
Even
away?
if you've given the remaining two people a pay raise,
Yep.
that work doesn't go away. So
Correct.
you've now just created an unreasonable workload for a
Yep.
three-person department that's now two people.
Yep.
right?
So,
So what we're left with is things like the library, the pool, the beach, recreation,
Council on Aging.
council on aging, you know,
Transfer station.
transfer station, those sorts of things that, with what we've already said, are going to be, my word again, decimated.
Okay.
Can I just,
I wanted to hear you articulate that, to know that those are the lower priorities versus the toppers, the top priorities that
Well,
you
They
that's what
only because they have to be, only because the other ones are the top priorities. It's not that they're not important to us or important to a lot of the community, but that's where we're at. I
Right.
mean,
And where I'm at, if possible, and I realize this is going to require some level of, I don't think you're going to be able to go to some department heads at all. But when you take a crack at this, what I would like to do is maintain as much as we can, but work to maybe keep some level of operation. Whether it be an employee or two, I don't know, if you can.
In what?
If we can.
In what?
I don't know. We have
Oh.
$1 million in deficit here.
No,
So
but-
I don't know where he can cut. But I mean, it's similar to what he did last December.
No, I don't understand what you said, though, an employee or two.
Well, some
in-
of these departments are only 3 or 4
Oh, I see
people.
what you're saying, okay.
So if it
On the
means
departments, but, yeah, okay.
maintain the service in the department,
You can't with less people.
but with less people.
You can't.
And I don't know if we can. I'm just asking.
if we could also just, on the other side of that coin I think you guys are asking them to also prepare some type of an override contingency budget.
100%.
that what you would like?
If that
That's what you guys
is,
said.
I mean, I would be remiss in saying, you know, that the town, you know, voted against the override. So any override that we propose or that gets developed has to be the leanest override that, you know, I think we have to listen and hear and not, you know, we have to be aware that we don't want to overreach in any way. It can't be new positions, it's got to be lean and mean.
well, that's
How
why I
many
asked
years
earlier.
out?
Hold on a sec.
Yeah.
That's why I asked earlier, are we asking them to provide a 5A and 5B budget?
They just said
So I
that,
think the answer, yes?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. Okay.
And my question is, how many years out? You know, we tried for a 5-year. Do
Well, we
want-
know
We know
sustainable 5
5
years isn't going to work.
Didn't work.
So, yeah, and I think we should be thinking about 2 or 3 years, just to focus on, we got unpredictable economies, unpredictable government, people are worried about their wallets. I think, let's take a smaller bite here. That's my view. I do think we need to have a contingency budget that focuses on restoring this reduction in force, but I think we need to take a smaller bite.
And does that contingency budget include any new positions or not?
no,
Because
that
that
the
was.
consensus?
That was the crux
And when I say new
for
position.
fire and police.
Exactly.
The fire and police, because, yeah, the fire and police. And then we talked about the facilities.
Yep, that was the other one.
That was the other one, facilities, and then the planner. Remember, we talked about having an additional planner, and then we talked about basically
Another beach
the
person.
the beach person.
Yeah, beach ops.
And then obviously, yeah,
Okay, so what I'm
And
hearing
then
is
the
that none of
schools.
those are contemplated. Is that a consensus?
I think to start, we have to start kind of small and then hear from the department heads about the absolute need for those.
yeah.
And I think that needs to be defined, because a need for fire is a different need than another department. And I'm just pointing at you because you're here. You know, that's life-saving, and it might be a different need than, say, another department's need. And I think people should be defining their need. I think that's important, as opposed to want.
I'd like to hear from Matt. He was patiently waiting at the podium.
I forgot what I was going to say, but I think it might not be necessary now, because one of the things I heard Mary say was that these are some things I needed to hear, so maybe you have the direction you feel you need. All I was going to suggest is that since there was so much commentary over, you know, last year about, like, if we had been involved in 5A, it never would have looked the way it did because we weren't involved. Why not just look at 5A from last year and make comments on that?
I think we are.
Do you know what I mean? But really, that should be your homework, shouldn't it? Just look at 5A and say, if we had had our druthers, this is what 5A would have looked at. And that to me would at least inform Mary and Rainey how to start with this year's 5A. You know what I mean? Like, because if you have the answers.
It's even worse, though.
There was no Monday morning quarterbacking. It wasn't even Monday morning quarterbacking. It was just like, well, we don't like this. We wish it was different. We would have, if we were in early, it would have been involved. Well, you can look at it now and say, this is what we would have done differently. Give that to Mary, and that would be a good start for this year's 5A. What do you think about that?
That's what we did. That's what I did.
Yep,
good.
that-
Congratulations.
yeah, and that's what you guys have had. Those are the
But we're a
schedules
million
that
in the
have
hole,
been-
Matt.
Yeah, but still, philosophically, though. You're a million in the hole, but still philosophically. This is a matter of priority.
Yeah, you
So
did.
5As weren't
This
meeting
is
the priority.
exactly
so
what we're
it was
looking
just-
at.
Just
Yeah, I think you kept talking while I was standing up.
Yeah.
So maybe you're there
We,
now.
I think we got there painfully.
Thank you, Matt.
Don't laugh, though, Fernando.
I won't.
It's funny.
It is not funny at
Okay,
all.
good.
No,
Don't even smile.
it's not, I, no,
I think that's enough, Matt.
yeah.
All right, further comments, questions? How much more do we want to provide in the way of feedback?
Second start?
Is Mary and Renee, you guys are happy now, right? You got the direction you need.
Is that what it is?
I don't know the happiest.
Qualify it as happy.
Is that,
You got the, you've got the priorities and you've got the, and it's consensus among the board, that's what I'm hearing too,
We got a lot of work to do.
within 5A and 5B
Do we have to call it that again?
No.
Well, for
Yes.
consistency's
Probably.
sake.
That's
yes.
the numeric
That's the way it
answer on
works.
the warrant, yeah.
Do
Well,
we
and I
feel
think when we develop the 5A and the 5B, we always have to, I mean, we've been through a lot as a town, and we got stuck with the budget that nobody wanted. And so we always have to, I think, approach it differently in knowing that it could be the budget that you get stuck with. So thus, you want to make sure that you're prioritizing appropriately.
Yep,
So to that point, have we done that tonight?
I believe that we have articulated our priorities. Wasn't that the goal?
yes.
So when they develop, so the 5A budget is going to have our priorities with the 2 additional RIFs, and then it's going to,
4.
it's
2 and 2.
2 and 2. But then there's going to be some cuts that they're going to make that show us, okay, this is what this looks like.
Yep.
And we will have an opportunity to look at it and say, well, no, we just can't take that cut. We'll have to make more cuts in this, or, there'll be some adjustments. That'll be the 5A, and then there'll be, I guess, a 5B budget that will include a much less override amount for consideration as well. That's my understanding.
That's gonna be-
Do we need to continue this discussion to another meeting?
Yes.
absolutely.
Oh, I
Okay,
thought you were going to say
what
not.
would be further discussion? What would the further discussion entail?
Once we get the numbers, right?
Once we can.
You mean, once we
well,
get the numbers?
When do you
Yeah.
think you can get a draft to us?
Not till after the 4th of July.
Oh, that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be longer than that.
No, I know,
This has-
I'm just
this-
giving you the immediate
This
answer.
has to
Maybe
go
we
out
need
to
a
the
meeting
department
before we
heads.
send out the department letters. You'll need some feedback for that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does everybody
don't
feel
know yet.
sufficiently heard on this topic?
At this
Yep.
point,
Yes.
you're done.
If, speak now or hold your peace until the next meeting. Okay. Mary, anything further that's hanging that we need to take care of?
No, I guess I'm just, I would like to just respond to comments. So we hear a lot of people say that we got stuck with this 5A budget and that it was not desirable. But the fact of the matter is, I don't consider that we got stuck with a 5A budget. It was a conscious set of decisions, and we had many, many months of meetings to go through and make modifications. We brought it to town meeting, and there was a set of choices made at town meeting. There were proposals to amend that budget.
Yeah.
And the town voted on each one of those amendments, and then the town voted at the ballot box. So I don't consider the 5A budget that we have, although as undesirable as I believe it is, I don't consider that we are stuck with it. That was based on a very long timeline and a lot of participation and opportunity to suggest changes.
Well put, thank you for
Yep.
adding that. All right, would anybody like to add anything before we move on? You've all been patiently sitting.
Nope.
It's now past 9:30, so, all right, why don't we move on then? Thank
Are
you.
we not done yet?
We just have a couple more. We have a town manager's report is next.
Thank you. Very quickly, I do not have an update on the veterans agent. I had to postpone that meeting today to get ready for tonight, but I'll have an update for you at the next meeting. I do have an update for you on,
Before you move on that?
Yeah.
We're still providing veteran services through, is it Mike?
yes, through Mike Thorpe.
Okay.
Yes, that is
Thank
correct.
you, Mike Thorpe. I know he's watching.
Yes.
Okay.
You had asked about, you had mentioned at the last meeting, a prospective grant for Harrison Street related to flood protection, specifically, excuse me, the Coastal Habitat and Water Quality Grant, which funds projects for data collection to support town-owned infrastructure improvements. I spoke with Leslie Fields today. We are moving forward with that project. She's going to be handling the entire application for us, and I hopefully will be signing off on it within the next couple of days. The total project amount will be just over $109,000, with town providing a cash match of $20,000, and we have that money in our article for grants.
Now,
So-
the coastal resiliency is aware of that?
No, I just told you first.
Oh.
I'll tell them tomorrow.
Change of events.
So which grant
Tell
was
them
that one?
tomorrow.
There was two of them.
The one they wanted
The water quality.
on Harrison Street.
No, there was two.
Yeah, this is the one that we only talked to Leslie about one, and this was it.
The water quality.
Yeah, so that's the one we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. The other update I have is on Duxbury Beach. There are currently 31 piping plover nests and 14 broods on the beach. Many of the 25 pairs that lost their nests to the nor'easter have renested and have begun to incubate. A total of 35 nests and one brood have been lost this season. Wow, that is a lot. 35. Man, I haven't seen that
That's a
kind of
big
loss
storm.
before. Yeah.
And they
D-
re-nest, right?
They
So
do.
it just extends the,
DBR field staff
Pain.
estimates there are 53 pairs on the beach. Least terns are currently nesting in all the colonies across Duxbury Beach. Many nests are being located every day by field staff. They're working together to enforce the regulations, the OSB regulations. If you got a dog, keep it on a leash and don't walk it in the no-dog area.
53, isn't that a record?
Yep, I wasn't going to say that until I verified it, but
All
I'm
right.
pretty
So
sure it is.
remember
I think it was 51 last
40-something
year.
last year, I
I
believe.
think it might have been 51 or something like that, but yeah,
Wow.
I keep track of that.
It's a very successful.
That's my
program.
update. And like I said, I hope to have information on the veterans agent at the next meeting. Not the 16th, but one after
But we're
that.
not anticipating any issues with that.
No. It's just to clarify stuff.
Okay.
Just the day got away. That's all I
Any
got.
questions or comments?
No, thank you for
I do have
talking to
one-
Leslie.
Go ahead, sorry, I stepped
No,
on
I'm just
that.
saying thank you for talking to Leslie and moving that forward.
You're welcome. Primarily, the reason I didn't get a chance to tell them is because it was so late in the day when I finally did talk to Leslie, so.
Rainey, I sat in on the Highway Safety Advisory Committee meeting last week to help a member of the public with a proposal, but while I was there was some mention of some issues with the school zone safety signs, that 20-mile-an-hour blinking sign, both at Chandler and DMS, DHS. The question was asked of me, who would be able to help fix those? I know it's the end of the year now, but I guess they're...
Are they
either-
broken?
Well, they're either not blinking at the right time, or one's blinking and the other one isn't, or can somebody just,
That's going to be Norm, DPW.
can you just pass that along for
Yeah,
whoever?
sure.
I don't know what the issue is. Well, I know what the issue is on Chandler, because usually one sign is on and the other one is not.
As in, like, non-operational?
Like, well, I don't know if it's broken.
Okay.
But it just,
I've never seen it blinking.
yeah.
They replaced the ones on
going too fast.
George Street.
You're
by
going
the
the
high
right
school.
speed. You're going
And
right
they haven't taken the old ones down.
Okay, yeah, so if we can just have somebody make sure that they work, because there are still kids in school, even though it's been graduation.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I told them I would pass that along.
Yep.
Next is committee appointments or reappointments.
I move that the Duxbury Selectboard appoint to the Liverpool Duxbury Task Force, ending a term ending at 6/30/26, Lynn Devenue. I also recommend that Duxbury Selectboard reappoint to that same Liverpool Duxbury Task Force for a period ending 6/30/26 the following reappointments: Joanne Moore, Tony Kelso, Mike Herlihy, Kevin Mullins, Brooke McDonough, Jeannie Horn, Frank Holden, Kathy Cross.
Second.
Discussion. Thank them all for their
Yes.
continued dedicated service. That's quite a group.
Yep.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries 5-0.
The following boards have available seats. There's one seat available on the Conservation Commission, the Design Review Board, the Duxbury Cultural Council, and on the Nuclear Advisory Committee. There are 2 seats available on the Economic Advisory Committee, the Municipal Commission on Disabilities, and there are 3 seats available on the Taxation Aid Committee. If anyone is interested in volunteering on the board or committee, you're encouraged to fill out a talent bank form, which can be found on the town's website under the Forms and Documents tab.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Next, we have a one-day liquor license, the Helen Bumpus Gallery Artist Reception.
I move that Mr. David Murphy, as a representative of the Helen Bumpus Gallery, is granted a one-day wine and malt license to hold an artist reception on Friday, July 11th, 2025, from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Helen Bumpus Gallery, 77 Alden Street, and contingent upon the conditions of the license.
Second.
I don't think we have anybody to present on that, right? Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries 5-0. Next is an event permit for...
No.
No?
Event permit.
Oh, there is no event permit, okay. Announcements.
Yeah, the special town meeting will be held on Monday, June 16th, 2025, beginning at 6 p.m. in the Performing Arts Centre, 73 Alden Street. Voter check-in begins at 4:45 p.m. Juneteenth Independence Day holiday. Town Hall offices will be closed on Thursday, June 19th, 2025, in observance of the June 19th holiday. The next scheduled Select Board meeting will be Monday, June 23rd, 2025, at 6:30.
Are we meeting on the 23rd?
16th.
Oh.
Is there also a bridge meeting coming up?
Yeah. Thank you.
When's that?
Sorry,
On
yeah,
Wednesday,
yeah.
the
As
18th.
good as the town meeting's going to be, the bridge meeting will be better, and that's on the 18th. It's on a Wednesday. It's going to be on TV. You can watch it.
I'm sorry.
And
We're
where's
meeting
it
on the
at?
16th before.
It's
Yeah,
the
probably
PAC
5:30.
at 6:30.
It's at the PAC.
Wednesday, the 18th, 6:30 at the PAC.
Bring your questions. It's DOT running the show, so.
I'm sorry, 16th PAC.
No,
18th.
18th.
18th,
Wednesday.
6:30.
Yes.
16th, you're busy.
I move to
Yeah.
adjourn.
I'm busy.
No.
Out of order.
Now, hold on a second. I looked at my schedule today, and they didn't have so we do have a select board meeting on the 23rd.
Yes.
Yes.
And do we also have one then on the
If I can
30th?
stop just for a second, clarification, we do have one immediately before a special town meeting as well.
Yes.
What time?
5:30.
5:30.
Just in case there's something we got to
Right.
do.
Yep.
And then the 23rd,
And then the 30th?
and then...
No 30th.
We skip to, what is it, July 14th or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
We'll send those out.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I announce the bonus shellfish
Sure can.
season?
Probably
Well, I
should.
had one more announcement, which is,
have you?
it wasn't on the list, though. We, of
Oh.
course, want to wish a happy Father's Day to all of our Duxbury dads,
Oh, really?
right?
I didn't know that was on there.
Was that on there?
No, it was not on there,
Okay.
but we should have added it, but go right ahead. Let's declare a bonus shellfish season, if you would.
I move that the Select Board declare a temporary bonus shellfish season for the temporary bonus shellfish season for the commercial harvesting of soft shell clams for the month of July, regulations that attach, and we're declaring a temporary bonus shellfish season for the commercial harvesting of Quahogs.
Yep.
You never get that one right. Clams for the month of
Town of Rhode
July.
Island.
Quahogs. Regulations as attached.
Right. Quag.
Quahogs?
We're
Quahogs.
talking about Long Island.
Nice job.
Did I do it?
Sorry. No, that's
You
perfect.
did, you said it fine.
That's
We were-
great,
We were
yeah.
doing the Long Island
May we
pronunciation.
have a second?
second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And, motion to...
5-0.
Yeah, we're good.
I think, I was going to give Mike the,
Move to adjourn.
was there a second on that motion?
Grumpiest adjourn, you're going to see.
I don't hear a...
Second.
I do hear a second.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.